It was a normal night, but its silence was broken by a terrifying scream coming from the imperial palace. Beniti's eyes opened in surprise. It was her first night as crown princess. She asked the maid what those screams were. The girl just covered her mouth with her hand in horror. Beniti had a bloody knife in her hands, and her white nightgown was covered in scarlet stains. When she turned around, she saw a young man lying on the floor in a puddle of his own blood. Beniti screamed, asking what happened here. The maid said in a trembling voice that the crown princess killed the crown prince. The crown prince despised Beniti. He didn't even let himself be touched. He always spoke cruelly and never smiled. There were times when Beniti regretted marrying him. She imagined the faces of her parents and brother, who were proud of her. And more, she wanted to become a princess who was loved by the people. But everything went wrong, and now Beniti is behind bars. She didn't understand why she was accused of killing the prince, because she didn't do it. Suddenly, a red-haired girl approached her cell and called out to the heroine. It was Rosalie. She asked Beniti if she was okay, holding a basket of food in her hands. Beniti said no one was listening to her. She only drank the wine her maid of honor gave her. After that, she immediately fell asleep and didn't remember what happened that night. Rosalie handed her a package of food and told her that she had prepared it herself for the girl. Beniti smiled sincerely and thanked her, because she was very hungry. Suddenly, Rosalie loosened her hand and dropped the package to the floor. Then she stepped on it with her foot, crushing it and contaminating the sandwich. The girl smiled arrogantly and said that Beniti had now become pleasant to look at, and that now Rosalie would finally have a dignified place. She was displeased to hear the heroine's complaints that she didn't like her position. Rosalie had been waiting for this day for a long time and now realized it was worth it. Beniti looked at her friend in horror. Then she grabbed the bars and asked what Rosalie had done. Rosalie laughed and said that the heroine would soon be executed. She would suffer for a long time and die in agony. She also comforted herself with the knowledge that her last meal had been prepared by Rosalie herself. Beniti screamed at her, asking what would happen to her parents. Rosalie smiled and said that she would soon find out everything herself. Soon the heroine was led to the main square to be executed. The people demanded that this witch be killed as soon as possible. On her knees, Beniti thought, Rosalie is a mere princess. She couldn't do this alone, so when did it all begin? She was distracted from her thoughts by the sound of guards pushing a cart onto the stage, and then removing the lid. Beniti saw 3 blonde people on the cart, all dead. The girl looked carefully at the corpses and recognized her family in them, her parents, and her brother. She remembered her last meeting with her family, before she officially became crown princess. And her mother said that this was the last time she could call her daughter Beniti. And now the heroine was devastated. She didn't understand what her family had done wrong. What had they done to deserve such a fate? At that moment, one of the executioners approached her and raised his sword over the girl's head. Suddenly, Beniti remembered something. It was a musical score. Shortly before her execution, the princess, the prince's sister, went to see her in her prison cell. She asked the girl to listen carefully because they had no time. The execution would take place soon. The princess handed Beniti the notes and asked her to sing a song during the execution. She also said that a witch gave these notes to His Highness the Prince. This object could change an unjust fate, and Beniti had no right to make a mistake if she wanted to go back in time. And now, awaiting execution, the heroine thought that if she were born again, she would never live her life this way. It was a terribly long and cruel dream, but she would not allow herself to become a victim of betrayal. Therefore, now was the time for her to wake up, and then the girl began to sing that very song. A moment later, Beniti opened her eyes. There was no angry crowd in front of her. She was in bed, apparently. Her new life, endowed with notes, had begun. The heroine looked forward in surprise, trying to catch her breath and still not fully comprehending that this was real. At that moment, a maid ran up to her and said that everyone was already worried that the young lady wouldn't wake up. Beniti was incredibly surprised to see Tasha standing in front of her. She immediately got out of bed and ran to the maid to hug her. The heroine asked if it had all been a dream. Tasha asked the girl if she had really had some kind of nightmare, but Beniti still couldn't believe it. Was it really just a dream? At that moment, Beniti's brother rushed into the room. He was worried about his sister and was glad she had woken up. As soon as the heroine saw her brother, tears immediately appeared in her eyes. She immediately ran into his arms, but the young man did not understand such a reaction. He asked Tasha what was wrong with his sister, but the maid also didn't know the answer. Then the brother asked Beniti to calm down. He heard that the girl had fallen off her horse, and now he came to check if she was all right. The heroine looked at him in surprise. Did she really fall off a horse? The young man said that after the fall she slept for a long time, so she had a nightmare. Moreover, she had a serious leg injury. Then Beniti finally realized. She had actually fallen off her horse. At an advanced age, she fell off a horse and twisted her ankle. At that time, she was also chosen as a candidate for the Crown Prince's bride. This was a week ago. Beniti couldn't believe it. Had she really gone back in time? Had the princess not deceived her, and had the notes worked? At first she thought it was just a bad dream, but she had a strange feeling. She clearly remembered the moment a sword was raised over her head, and this feeling made the heroine shudder in horror. Then Beniti realized that everything was real. The witch's notes gave her a chance to change her destiny, but it was unclear why the prince had them. Did he really know what would happen? Beniti also remembered the day Rosalie came to her before her execution. She was the one the heroine considered her only true friend. So why did she decide to betray her? Beniti was distracted from her thoughts by her brother. He asked what she was thinking about. Now it was better for her to lie in bed and rest. Besides, the heroine's parents were very worried about her. Beniti immediately asked her brother where they were now. The boy said that the parents were now on the street, talking to the doctor. The heroine looked out the window. Her mother and father were there, alive and unharmed. The girl opened the window and shouted loudly, attracting her parents' attention. The heroine's father noticed something strange in his peripheral vision and turned towards the palace. Beniti was already running towards them. She seemed extremely emotional, and tears appeared in her eyes. The heroine immediately threw herself around her father's neck, hugging him tightly. The man hugged her back and asked what happened. The heroine's mother and the doctor were shocked by this behavior, because the duke's daughter cannot run barefoot through the garden. And besides, she hurt her leg. Beniti didn't answer anything, just ran to her mother and hugged her tightly. The woman asked what happened to her daughter, if she was really that scared. Beniti timidly replied yes, and then apologized. The heroine thought about it. She had already made a promise and would fulfill it again. In that life, the crown prince had been cold and cruel to her, but she would no longer be just Carson's pathetic bride. Beniti will fix everything, just as the princess asked her to. She also promised herself to find those who wanted to get rid of her family. Then Beniti will do everything possible for these people to answer for everything. As the heroine rode in the carriage, she thought that becoming the crown princess was not easy. After all, among many girls from prestigious families, the 3 most suitable are chosen. But in the end, only one girl becomes the prince's chosen one. After 2 years of special education, she marries at an advanced age and enters the Ruby Palace, which is her common residence with the prince, thus becoming the crown princess. Within 2 days, the candidate selection process will begin. Soon, Beniti arrived at the designated place, Mariana's boutique, Mariana Isabel, the best designer in the empire. When the heroine opened the doors of the boutique, all the seamstresses and maids bowed to her in greeting. Beniti said she was looking for a dress for the bride selection ceremony, and then the girls said they would call Marian. The heroine went to the waiting room, and soon a woman entered. It was Marian. She greeted Beniti in her boutique and told her that they had only met a year ago, and that the girl had already grown a lot. The heroine remembered that she and her mother once visited a woman in a mansion. Marian said that they were already sewing the dress the Duchess ordered and wanted to bring it to show the girl. However, Beniti said she would like the seamstresses to stop sewing. Marian smiled awkwardly and said that was the Duchess's order, so they couldn't break the agreement. Beniti smiled and said that in that case they could continue sewing. She said she wouldn't wear it, but she wasn't going to contradict her mom either. Marian chuckled, saying she didn't think the young lady was so stubborn. Besides, the other candidates already had elegant dresses. It would be difficult to make anything better than what the Duchess ordered. Then, Beniti said she was looking for the most ruffled clothes. Marian was surprised that the girl wanted to wear a ruffled dress for the ceremony. Then, Beniti added that the dress should also be eye-catching. Soon the seamstresses brought dresses to the girl for her to choose from. She carefully examined each of them and decided on one. Marian said it was called the Golden Wave. Beniti said she wanted to buy it. When the heroine left the boutique, she thought her mother would yell for a long time when she found out what she was wearing. But by that time, the ceremony would already be over. Mariana looked at the girl and suddenly smiled mischievously. Hearing this, Beniti turned around, but thought she was just imagining things. Soon the heroine returned home. Tasha was already waiting for her. It turned out that the imperial family sent a carriage for Beniti. The ceremony is very soon, and Tasha was wondering what kind of carriage to ride in. Beniti bit her lip in resentment. She could hardly remember how many misfortunes awaited her after the ride in that carriage. However, she will let Tasha be happy if that's what she wants. These events will not be repeated under any circumstances. Then Beniti said that Tasha would go with her. The maid was very happy with this decision. She had never been to the imperial palace before, so this trip was very exciting for her. Then Beniti remembered that on their last trip there, they wore their best clothes. That time, they visited the city for the first time, so they eagerly looked at the whole area. Then the heroine asked the maid to put on her shabbiest clothes. Tasha looked at her in surprise, thinking they should have worn better clothes. However, Beniti insisted, this time she must wear the ugliest clothes. Tasha was indignant and said that this would not work. Seeing the lady's perplexed look, she said that the other maids would look down on her, and even though Tasha could survive, it would be a shame for Beniti. The heroine suddenly realized that she had not foreseen such an outcome of events. She wanted to appear as extravagant and ignorant as possible by dressing her maid like a beggar. But she didn't think Tasha would be so stubborn. Then Beniti said there was a reason for this, and that the maid should simply follow the order. Tasha almost cried, because there would be other maids there, including Haney, and Beniti couldn't even imagine what awaited her after this. After that, everyone will start talking about Beniti, and Tasha didn't want anyone to offend the girl. Then the heroine remembered that Haney was Rosalie's maid. She and Tasha had personal scores to settle. Beniti sighed tiredly, still allowing the maid to wear whatever she wanted. Tasha smiled broadly and thanked her mistress. Soon the girls got ready and went out to the carriage. Beniti handed Tasha a whole suitcase with a change of clothes. The heroine smiled mischievously and said that she needed him to prepare a little surprise for her. The girls wanted to get into the carriage when Beniti's mother suddenly approached them. She asked if the girl could really manage without her. The heroine smiled and said that she was already 17 years old, a true lady, and would succeed. The mother asked Beniti to be careful and behave with dignity. The heroine smiled warmly at her mother, thinking to herself that she would actually have to waste all her dignity. Tasha was incredibly impressed by how soft the carriage seats were. Beniti was a little displeased with the maid's agitation. She sighed tiredly and asked her to stop, saying she was acting like a country bumpkin. Then Tasha tried to appear elegant, asking her if she now looked like a country bumpkin. Beniti looked at the maid in confusion and then burst out laughing. Soon the girls arrived at the palace. Tasha, seeing it, opened her mouth in surprise. The palace and the garden were truly enormous and looked very opulent. There was an enormous fountain in the middle of the courtyard. Beniti said that other people would also be very surprised to see such a chatty maid for the first time. Tasha looked at the girl in surprise. She knew exactly where to go, as if she had been there often. The heroine asked the maid to be silent for at least a minute. Then she thought about the fact that the main palace's fifth library mainly contained philosophical books, which is why it was rarely visited, and this very library was right in front of her. Tasha looked in surprise at Beniti, who was silent at the door, and asked her what she was doing. Then the heroine took her suitcase from the maid's hands and asked her to wait here, while she headed inside the library. Tasha waited for her mistress for a while, and then heard the sound of the door opening. When Beniti walked out the door, Tasha cried out in surprise and horror. All the other guests in the hallway gasped in surprise. Beniti was wearing an extravagant yellow dress, the same one she bought at Mariana's boutique. She planned to be the wildest of them all that evening. Tasha immediately ran to her and told her that the girl's dress was too provocative. After all, the Duchess ordered Beniti to behave with dignity and elegance. The heroine said that Tasha didn't understand anything, because this is how one can show their dignity to the imperial family. In fact, the girl wanted everyone to see her bad taste and poor manners. For this, she needed a dress that would definitely get her excluded, so she changed clothes. Beniti asked Tasha to stop talking about her outfit. The maid didn't give up. She was worried about what people might think. Then the heroine looked at her sadly and ordered her to stop. Tasha looked at her mistress in surprise, but still decided to stop. Beniti understood that they had been friends since childhood, and now for the first time she showed anger towards Tasha, but now there was no other way out. Then the heroine apologized to the maid, and then they headed to the main palace. The girls stood in front of the hall entrance, but only Beniti could go in there, so Tasha wished her good luck and stepped aside. Beniti thought that now everything truly begins. When the girl opened the door, All the candidates present looked at her, and at her dress with surprise. Beniti smiled mischievously. This was exactly the reaction she expected. The girls whispered among themselves. They didn't understand how she could wear such a provocative dress. Soon, one of the imperial palace maids announced that Her Majesty the Empress had arrived. She was a middle-aged woman with violet eyes. She quickly looked at all the girls. The candidates bowed to her, lowered their heads and closed their eyes. The Empress was elegant and beautiful, but certainly not merciful. Contrary to her appearance, she is always ready to ask difficult questions, and unpleasant ones. The Empress said she was very happy to share this wonderful morning with the girls. The candidates said it was a great honor for them to see Her Majesty. Then the housekeeper asked all the girls to introduce themselves in turn. Last time, Beniti chose eloquent words to introduce herself, but this time it will be different. The heroine decided to simply say that she was the only daughter of the Reishi family. Her name was Beniti Reishi. The housekeeper, like all other candidates, was surprised that the girl's speech ended there. The Empress said that Miss Beniti had a very cheerful greeting. The housekeeper cleared her throat and asked all the other girls to introduce themselves. When all the other candidates stated their names and introduced themselves, the woman said that they should now begin the examination, and asked the girls to go to the room assigned to them. When Beniti arrived at the correct room, she began to think that this place itself made people nervous. Soon the housekeeper entered the room and said that they should begin. The heroine sat imposingly in a chair and smiled cheerfully. The woman said that the girl did not have very good posture and asked her to sit up straight, but Beniti said her back hurt. When the housekeeper asked if she should call someone who could give her an injection, the girl immediately straightened up. When the housekeeper wanted to start the test, Beniti suddenly began to shake. The woman asked her what she was doing. Then the heroine said that she had a habit of shaking her legs. She said she couldn't get rid of this habit. Then, the housekeeper nervously stood up from the table and grabbed the heroine by the shoulders, forcing her to stop. Her eyes gleamed with irritation, and she said that she definitely needed a sedative injection. Beniti wondered if she had gone too far. When she calmed down, the housekeeper suggested that she first check her knowledge of history, and asked her if she had seen a fountain on the palace grounds. Then she asked her to explain the meaning of its name and the reason for its construction. Beniti knew that the fountain was called Valiant Women. When the emperor fought the dragon, some women went to the battlefield to distribute gunpowder and weapons to the soldiers. However, they were all reduced to ashes, and the imperial fountain was named after their actions. But the girl could not give that answer. Then she smiled ridiculously and said that it was a huge wishing fountain. After all, people usually make a wish at the fountain, and since it is the largest in the empire, it will help them make their most cherished dreams come true. The housekeeper looked at the candidate in bewilderment. She asked her if she knew why the empire's coat of arms had wings. The heroine knew that when Emperor Alendra defeated the dragon, but the imperial family fell, the curse would disappear only with him. The cursed child gains special power, but dies because he cannot control it. Therefore, many heirs died. But there was a belief that an emperor would be born who would defeat the curse, and would be able to revive even the most abandoned wastelands. At some point, the princes stopped dying. People thought the dragon's curse was gone. This is written in detail in the book History of the Empire, which is mandatory reading for every noble, which is why Beniti knew every detail. However, she decided to answer that the wings on the coat of arms meant that the dragon was no longer there. The housekeeper was annoyed. She said the answer was incorrect, because the wings are a symbol of the dragon's curse. The girl should definitely reread the history of the empire. Then she said that there would be no more questions about history, and suddenly asked the girl when her birthday was. Beniti replied that her birthday was on December 12th. The woman said she was born on the same day as the star, and then asked if the girl remembered celebrating her 8th birthday. Beniti asked if the housekeeper could remember facts from so long ago, but the woman said she was asking questions here. The housekeeper also asked if the girl knew what would happen if she broke the rules. Beniti's eyes also lit up with happiness. She asked if she would really be excluded from the selection ceremony. However, the housekeeper said that she would not be expelled, but could be accused of disrespecting the imperial family. And if the accusation was proven, part of Reishi's lands would be returned to the empire. The heroine said that it was the first time she had heard of anything like that, and then asked if that rule had always existed. It seemed to her that the woman had just made it up herself. Suddenly, the housekeeper stood up from the table and hit it hard, saying that before Beniti, No lady had behaved so thoughtlessly. There is a big difference between ignorance and negligence. If the girl continues to behave like this, the housekeeper promised to ask the minister to file a contempt lawsuit. The heroine thought, it seems the housekeeper was very angry. The empress's servants are her face, so insulting the countess can be tantamount to insulting her majesty, which means she must ensure that she is dismissed for her terrible behavior. Then, Beniti said she didn't understand what the woman wanted to hear when she asked about her 8th birthday. The housekeeper said that she didn't remember all the details of her childhood. That's normal, but she asked the girl to think about the brightest moments. Beniti thought she could have ignored this question, but for some reason it seemed to her that it was not random. Then she asked the woman what happened to her when she was 8 years old. The housekeeper didn't even turn in her direction and said she had no idea what she was talking about. She didn't know what was happening to her at that moment. Then Beniti asked what the question was then. The woman said that this was just part of the examination. She was just testing her memory. But the heroine noticed that the housekeeper's hands were trembling slightly. When the test was over, Beniti went for a walk around the palace. She thought about the fact that after this, Alika began to behave strangely. She spoke confusingly and constantly made mistakes. She didn't understand what was happening to this cold-blooded woman, so she decided that she would need to know more about it when she got home. Soon the heroine put on her usual dress and wondered where Tasha could be now. The maid was waiting for her in the street. The wait was so long that the girl fell asleep, sitting near the palace walls. Beniti ran to her and woke her up, telling her that she was done. At that moment, she heard someone's voice behind her and turned to see who it was. It was Rosalie. She wore a black and lilac dress. She was walking through the palace garden. Hearing someone's voices, she turned to see who it could be. However, at that moment Beniti and Tasha had already disappeared around the corner. The heroine didn't want to be noticed. The maid wanted to ask her what was happening, but the heroine immediately covered her mouth with her hand and ordered her to be silent. At that moment, another person's voice was heard. It was a woman. She said that even they assumed that roses were interested in plants. Beniti noticed that the girl had a very pleasant and familiar voice. Then she peered around the corner and realized to whom it belonged. It was Princess Selina Reynos. The heroine pursed her lip. It was thanks to this girl that she managed to return to the past. She wanted Selina to believe in her and that she could fix everything. Then, suddenly, Rosalie told the princess what had happened recently. She was referring to the dress Miss Beniti was wearing. The girl said it was a very provocative outfit and that apparently bad rumors would soon spread. It was said that there were many diamonds on that dress. That's why people will start talking about her, because they don't understand how her conscience allowed her to wear something like that. Rosalie said she knew Miss Beniti wasn't so extravagant. Apparently something happened to her. The heroine wrote in surprise. She didn't think Rosalie would change everything this way. But so far everything was going as planned. Then, suddenly, the princess asked if Beniti could buy her dress at Marianne's boutique. The heroine wondered how the princess could guess this. Hearing that there were many diamonds on this dress, Selina assumed it existed in only one copy, and then asked if it was called Golden Wave. Rosalie said the princess's guess was correct. Then the girl said she wanted to buy it herself. Beniti wondered why the princess needed such a striking dress. Rosalie asked her if she really liked this dress. Selina smiled and said that the girl lives in Reynosa, the land of fashion, but has no sense of taste at all. Besides, this dress doesn't have any diamonds, but cubic zircons. A certain jeweler, Hans, developed a zircon that looks exactly like a diamond. Rosalie wondered if this meant that the diamonds on Beniti's dress were fake. Then she asked the princess why she wanted to buy a dress with fake stones. Selina smiled again and said that the girl didn't understand her at all. To make a beautiful dress, you need many diamonds, but it will turn out completely overwhelming. Commoners also want to wear sparkling stones, but the price is too high for them. However, thanks to zircon, everything is possible. Everyone will be able to afford a nice and inexpensive dress, because zircon is not inferior to its other sparkles. The heroine was surprised. Were there really no real diamonds on her dress? Then she asked Tasha if she knew anything about it, but the maid said it was the first time she had heard of it. Beniti thought, the princess is Carson's younger sister, and she is a year younger than her. She is characterized by being very fond of flowers and various plants, but in reality, her passion is fashion. Soon, an anonymous designer with superior skills will emerge in the fashion world. During the heroine's wedding, it would be revealed that this designer was Selina. She will own a huge boutique on the outskirts of the Reino's empire. The reason she hides all this is because the Empress wanted Selena to become a normal princess and an ordinary one. Tasha looked at her mistress fascinated. Beniti turned to her and told her it wasn't like that at all. However, the maid didn't listen to her. Her expression indicated that she understood why the girl wore this dress. Meanwhile, the conversation between Selena and Rosalie continued. The princess said that the seamstresses managed to sew an unsurpassed outfit at an affordable price. That's why Marian created only one outfit. She wanted to find someone who understood fashion and appreciated the values of cubic zirconia. She wondered if people could distinguish a real stone from a fake one, but everyone refused to buy it because they thought it was a diamond. That's why people were literally afraid of this dress. However, Miss Beniti dared to buy it. Rosalie asked why the princess didn't do it first. Then Selena replied that Marian refused to sell it to her. She said she would just give it away for free if no one bought this dress. However, Miss Beniti took it. Therefore, she did not intend to flaunt her outfit, but was ahead of fashion. Moreover, she became a fashion innovator. The heroine was surprised. She hadn't anticipated such a scenario at all, and didn't understand how it was possible to reach such conclusions. When Beniti returned home, it turned out that she had indeed achieved the status of a fashionista, and the whole family was proud of her. Tasha said she didn't even suspect that her mistress was thinking so deeply when she chose this dress. The heroine's mother said that her daughter is incredibly intelligent. She was worried that Beniti had hurt her head when falling off the horse, but now all her fears had dissipated. The heroine couldn't believe everything that was happening. Her plan should have been completely different. After that day, people started to look at her differently. At first, they considered her crazy and immature. However, now the heroine missed her old appearance, because everyone now looked at her with admiration. Now she was no longer considered crazy. Her reputation had only improved, and these thoughts made her panic. Thanks to her, cubic zirconia, which is cheaper than flour, became popular. And now all the young women in the city wear these stones, and Beniti's popularity only grew. The girl realized that she would never have bought this dress if she had known how everything would turn out. She suddenly remembered the day she arrived at Marian's boutique. She remembered that the woman smiled slyly at her that day. Now the girl understood why she did it. A voice pulled Beniti from her thoughts. It turned out to be Rosalie. She asked if the girl had really chosen her dress herself. She didn't know that Beniti understood fashion so well. The heroine thought about the fact that she also didn't know that Rosalie was gossiping about her with the princess. The girl thought, now she has a great chance of becoming the prince's potential bride. Therefore, she knew that today she had to fail the exam. Today the candidate's task will be to determine the type of tea. During the exam, they must understand the variety solely by smell, indicate the beneficial properties, and the cultivation method. In the past, it rained during the exam, but Beniti continued to take it calmly, and asked him to bring her an umbrella. Alika greatly appreciated this act. However, today the heroine intended to do everything possible to make her grade the lowest. Thanks to her memories, she knows what awaits her, unlike others, which means she can help someone with the exam. But she didn't know which girl to choose. Even if they have good scores, all those with a title lower than daughters of a marquis or a duke will be eliminated. Someone is needed to take her place. Then the heroine drew attention to Diletta, the daughter of Marquis Edmund. However, she decided it would be better to choose a redhead girl named Rumina. She had an honest family who believed that lying only causes problems. Beniti couldn't be as honest as possible with her, but she also had no intention of harming her family. Then the heroine approached the girl and told her that she thought today they would have to guess the type of tea. The examination area only had tea tables, so the questions would be related to that. They have a chance to prepare a little better for the exam. Rumina asked why the girl was telling her that. Because she didn't like her. Beniti tried to explain that in reality, it wasn't like that at all. Then Rumina said that Beniti really didn't like her, so there could be no useless conversations between them. She said she already knew everything about the exam, and then walked past the girl and headed in the other direction. The heroine was a little irritated. This girl had no manners at all. She didn't even listen to her until the end. Then she decided to turn to Diletta. The girl thanked her for her help and said that it seemed plausible. Beniti noticed that this girl was not so careful, so she decided to continue with her advice. She said that it would rain today. She accidentally found out from the magician while driving here. Diletta was surprised because the weather was too clear for it to rain. Then the heroine approached her and leaned over her ear. whispering that if during the exam she saw a dragonfly flying low, then she should ask the examiners to prepare an umbrella, as this happens when humidity increases. Beniti then decided to approach Rosalie and tell her that she had useful information. She said it would rain soon. Rosalie was incredibly surprised. She didn't understand what to do with the dress in this case. Then the heroine asked her if she wanted to stay in the rain for a while during the exam. It would be useful during the exam, but Rosalie didn't understand why she had gone so far. Beniti smiled, knowing that in that case both would be expelled, but decided to smile broadly, and said that it would only improve her reputation. She understood that they could catch a cold, and then they definitely wouldn't get extra points. But she told the girl that this way they would show their resilience and earn the respect of others. Rosalie said the plan sounded good. The heroine smiled. Apparently the girl had finally fallen into the trap. At that moment, the housekeeper entered the courtyard and asked all the girls to get ready. She was about to say what they would do in today's exam, when Beniti suddenly interrupted her. The girl said her throat was dry and asked for a cup of tea to drink. The other candidates looked at each other in bewilderment and said that the girl was behaving quite rudely. Without waiting for an answer, the heroine took a cup of tea and drank it in one gulp. Then suddenly, she screamed and said the tea was very hot. Ilika sighed in disgust, but decided to continue. She needed to explain to the girls what would happen in today's exam. However, her speech was interrupted by a strange sound. It turned out to be Beniti. She burped so loudly that she attracted the attention of all the girls in the garden. Then, she innocently scratched her head and apologized for her behavior. Everyone present was in complete shock. They didn't expect the girl to stoop to such a thing. Beniti chuckled, thinking that now her reputation would definitely decline. After the exam, everyone will make fun of her for this burp. Ilika took the cup and took a sip to check if the girl had accidentally drunk alcohol, but she realized that it was normal tea. She said that Beniti apparently had not yet mastered tea drinking etiquette. The girl replied that she was simply thirsty and couldn't stop. Then, the housekeeper asked her if she knew the name of the tea she had just drunk. The heroine thought she definitely knew the answer. It was artichoke tea. It has no aroma and a weak taste, but it is very expensive, so people simply cannot afford it. But all nobles know it. However, she couldn't answer correctly, so she said it was bergamot. Ilika asked her why she thought that. Then Beniti said that it smelled like bergamot when she drank it. Ilika looked at the girl sadly and leaned into her ear. She whispered that last time, it seemed to her that the girl was not in the mood to take the exam. But this time she had gone too far. Nobles drink more than water, so the housekeeper couldn't believe that Beniti didn't know the name of the tea the woman had just drunk. Ilika didn't understand what she was trying to achieve, but asked not to involve her in this. Beniti realized that the housekeeper was very angry and would now treat her worse. All she had to do was get wet in the rain, after which they would definitely leave her alone. At that moment, Diletta noticed that dragonflies started flying very low and immediately approached the observer. She said that, judging by the low-flying dragonflies, it would rain soon, and asked for an umbrella. The examiner looked back and saw that the dragonflies were flying very low. Then he turned to the girl and took some notes on his tablet. He said he would ask for an umbrella to be prepared for the girl. Beniti smiled. Apparently, everything was going as planned. Diletta was to continue scoring points. Soon it really started to rain. The girls were in shock because their clothes were wet. The heroine stood in the rain, without an umbrella, she thought. Maybe it was for the exam, but no one offered to bring her an umbrella. Suddenly, Ilika approached her, held out her hand, and asked the girl to allow her to look at her. She touched her face, and then said that Miss Beniti's exam was over. She added that her body temperature had dropped significantly, and this could affect her health. Meanwhile, Rosalie was still standing in the rain. It was very difficult for her, but she endured. Rumina also didn't ask for an umbrella. She was historically determined to endure this whole downpour without unnecessary help. Then, Ilika turned to Rosalie, Rumina, and Beniti and asked them to go to the hospital room. It turned out that the girls had severe colds and kept sneezing while lying in the hospital beds. Then, Beniti asked Rumina what she was doing there in the rain. The girl was indignant. She said she immediately realized that Rosalie and Beniti specifically wanted to get wet, and that's why she decided to do the same. The heroine swore that, apparently, this girl had gone crazy. She belongs to the family of Viscount Iskandar, who had a small estate. Coal deposits were found next to it. The Viscount gradually expanded his business and amassed a great fortune. eventually receiving the title of duke. Therefore, Rosalie and other nobles were not happy with the Rumina family because they initially had a low title. Because of her inferiority complex, Rumina began to hate all nobles. She especially hated Beniti and Rosalie. The heroine felt a little uncomfortable being with people who hated her. However, this would allow her to miss the rest of the exam, and these thoughts undoubtedly made her happy. When the girl woke up, it turned out that everyone around her had managed to distort her actions again. Tasha came to the lady with good news. All the newspapers were writing about Beniti. It was said that the three girls did not leave the exam, even in the torrential rain, and this undoubtedly made them incredibly resilient in the eyes of others. And other candidates, on the contrary, were reprimanded for their inhumanity because they ignored the girls who were in the torrential rain, without umbrellas, and did not help them in any way. Beniti said that with such an expression, Tasha would be worth going to work in the theater. But in the end, everything was turned upside down again, and soon all the candidates gathered in the hall again. Rumina smiled and said that she knew the girls specifically wanted to get caught in the rain. Beniti bit her lip in resentment because everything was completely wrong. She didn't want to become Carson's wife, but why did things go wrong? Soon Alika announced the names of the girls who became the main candidates for brides. They were Rumina, Rosalie, and Beniti. The heroine felt a knot in her throat. None of them were excluded. The heroine's parents were incredibly happy for their daughter. The mother said she knew she could handle it. Tasha was also happy with the news that her mistress had passed the selection. She said that people talk about her from time to time. Everyone thinks that Beniti is a true crown princess who will serve her people well. However, the heroine asked to be left alone. She had no face. The parents looked at each other in bewilderment, attributing it to the fact that her cold had not yet completely passed. Beniti sat on her bed. When everyone left her room, she thought she needed a new plan. The candidates will soon participate in a competition, after which the next princess will be chosen. Before this, the girls will meet with the empress in a ceremony where they will be given the princess candidate pendants. But if the girl does not participate in this ceremony, she will be automatically expelled. Beniti would like to refuse to participate, but she cannot. There is no good reason for it, and it would be most absurd for a young woman from a noble family to refuse the title of crown princess. Therefore, the heroine firmly decided that the best solution would be to run away from home. At dusk, the girl packed her bags, took an oil lamp and non-perishable food, and later she was going to rent a carriage. Soon she was ready to leave. The girl was only going to return when she was sure that she had been excluded from the competition. She hoped it would take approximately 1 week. Beniti just needed to hold on a little longer. She was sure she would succeed because she knew many things she didn't know before. The girl was determined to change her future. When Beniti left the palace grounds, she looked at the map again. She needed to check it. She had 4 days of walking left to reach Kubaran in the north. Her father wouldn't believe she would ever get there alone. Consequently, no one from the family will look there. However, she chose this place because her father's mentor, Duke Kubaran, is in Kubaran. The girl must be prepared for all contingencies, as the journey can be complicated. So Beniti needs to take a carriage to Vanessa, spend the night there, and then take another carriage and go to Rizzo's. She could take the shortcut to Rizzo's, but then she would have to spend the night outdoors, and then spend the whole day on the road without stopping to reach Kubaran. Shortly before leaving, the girl asked for help from one of the palace workers. He brought her the book she asked for. It was called Basic Guide for Beginner Travelers. However, the young man was interested in knowing why the girl needed this book. Beniti asked him not to say anything about this to her parents or Tasha. She asked the boy to promise her that he would keep everything a secret. The young man said he wouldn't tell anyone, but that he truly hoped everything would be fine with Beniti, and that the Duke would have nothing to worry about. The heroine smiled softly at the boy and thanked him for his help. Thanks to this book, which Hampton gave her, she was able to find out where she could rent a carriage and spend the night. There were still 2 hours to walk to the parking lot, and then the girl thought she was in too much of a hurry. Apparently, her illness had not yet subsided. Moreover, the carriage might not stop at all. Soon the girl reached her destination. The man asked her which carriage she would like to choose. Among several carriages, the girl noticed one that had a curtain. She thought that with a curtain no one would see her, so she decided to choose that one. The heroine wanted to cry from fatigue, but she was very happy to finally be able to leave and not walk on her own feet. Soon the girl got into the carriage and headed towards the city exit. Beniti noticed that they were driving quite slowly. Suddenly, she heard a strange sound coming from the door and turned around. She was surprised to see a stranger in a raincoat there. A young blonde man quickly ran towards her and covered her mouth with his hand, silencing her. He said he would let her go if she didn't scream. He soon removed his hand from her mouth, and Beniti glared angrily at the stranger. She was surprised when she realized who the young man was. Crown Prince Carson Reynolds. He usually has black hair and red eyes. However, he disguises himself as a blonde when he wants to hide his identity. And now was one of those times. The girl didn't understand why he needed this. Then she suddenly remembered that the day before the appearance of the Crown Princess, Carson wanted to escape, but he was caught. It seems this time he did the same. This was the same man who always treated Beniti coldly and was killed on the first night after their wedding. The girl didn't want to see him anymore and ran away. However, now they met again, and the heroine didn't understand why this happened. Then Carson asked her to take him to Vanessa. So, the heroine thought that the young man had been captured by the palace guards in vans, which means those people were already chasing them. Then the girl apologized, but said she couldn't do it. The boy looked at her in bewilderment and once again asked her to help him. Beniti got angry. She didn't understand how he could ask for help with such a conceited face. She said she wouldn't help someone who silenced and threatened her. Then, the boy indifferently replied that he was indeed a little rude. Beniti said she didn't need his apologies and ordered him to get out of the carriage. Then, Carson handed her a handful of coins in exchange for her help. The girl's mouth dropped open in surprise. With these coins, she would be able to live comfortably away from home. However, she realized it would be a very stupid decision, so she said she didn't need these coins. The boy looked at her in bewilderment, and the heroine slowly began to get angry. She didn't like him looking at her like that and hoped he would leave soon. Then, Carson said that in this case, he would tell everyone about her when he got out of the carriage. He said that the girl's clothes looked normal, but it was clear that the fabric was of high quality, something no commoner could afford. The girl was traveling in a rented carriage without an escort or family crest, which clearly means she is hiding something. The heroine cried out in indignation and asked why her companion didn't take another carriage. Carson replied that there were no other free carriages. Beniti thought about it. She couldn't let him know. She had no doubt that the boy would tell on her, because he was one of those people who don't choose their methods. She was confused by the fact that they needed to go to the same place, but she was glad that their final destination still didn't coincide. Then the girl reluctantly decided to accept the young man's conditions. However, she said that as soon as they reached the right place, they would immediately go their separate ways. Meanwhile, the carriage turned off the road. Beniti checked that there was approximately a quarter of a day left to Vanessa. They will have to spend quite some time with Carson, and this is the first time they communicate outside of any status. Then, Beniti decided to ask him why he had run away. However, Carson had no intention of answering. The girl thought that even now he was showing his bad temper. However, she couldn't understand why he was always looking out the window. The girl said she just wanted to hear his story. Carson replied that he had no intention of satisfying her curiosity. The heroine frowned. She decided not to ask the young man anything else. She forgot that they were now on equal footing, so she apologized out of habit. Soon Beniti's carriage arrived at the designated place. The girl thanked the coachman and gave him money for travel and accommodation. She turned, expecting to see Carson there, but he was no longer there. Beniti exhaled. Now she could finally relax, and now I just had to quickly find a place to spend the night. In the morning, the girl realized that she thought her escape would be perfect, but she discovered that her things were stolen while she slept. She asked the hotel owner for money, but he didn't care about her problems. He told her that she should go to the city government if she was not satisfied with something. At that moment, a merchant approached her and told her that he would sell her clothes, and he would get a lot of money from it. The girl had no other choice, so she gave him her pajamas. Beniti waited for the merchant until night, but he never returned. At night, the hotel owner approached her and asked her to leave. Outside it was pouring rain, and the girl had no idea where to go. However, the innkeeper insisted. He had no intention of keeping the girl any longer, so he escorted her to the door. Beniti remembered his words that she should go complain to the city government. However, in this case, her family will definitely find out everything. And the news that Miss Beniti ran away from home on the day the princess candidates were announced will quickly spread through the area. The heroine didn't understand what to do at all. Then she headed to the city center in an old, ragged dress donated by a merchant. As soon as she put on these clothes, The image of the noble lady immediately disappeared. Suddenly, a thought came to the girl's mind. She needed to find Carson. She will not stay on the street, but for that she needs to find the young man. Just after lunch at the tavern, the most famous establishment in Vanessa, a search party caught him. Therefore, the girl decided that she should find him first. Beniti rushed to observe where Carson was supposed to be, but all she saw were people she didn't know enjoying their food. She scared the visitors with her disheveled appearance, and then wondered if the boy was still not inside. Suddenly, she turned around and saw him walking straight towards the establishment's doors. Beniti walked towards him and blocked his way inside. Carson was a little scared. He almost used magic to protect himself. Then the heroine stared at him and asked him to help her. She said she saved him yesterday and needed help in return. After all, the boy got here thanks to her. In response to this, Carson merely smiled, saying it was quite an interesting sight. He asked what happened to the girl. Beniti replied that her money was stolen, and then her clothes were also taken. The boy laughed and said that even his cat wouldn't do such stupid things. The heroine immediately remembered the Empress's cat, whose name was Belle. It was a fat, pampered animal that couldn't do anything on its own. She felt very offended by the claim that she was more useless than this cat. Then, Carson asked her to tell him everything in more detail. Beniti replied that her things were not there when she woke up. The boy smiled and said that it would be strange if nothing happened without the noblewoman, without the servants. Apparently, they planned to rob her from the beginning. Then Beniti understood everything. That's why this innkeeper dismissed her. However, she still needed help. However, Carson replied that he didn't want to help her. He said that yesterday he paid her for everything. Therefore, his conscience would be clear. Beniti got angry. She said that if the boy didn't help her, then she would tell everyone that he had sneaked into her carriage. After all, apparently she's not the only noblewoman who ran away from home. However, Carson walked past her and told her she could do whatever she wanted. He was sure that no one would believe the girl in this state. Then Beniti screamed, saying she knew they were looking for the guy here. She reported that she saw uniformed people with the imperial crest. They said they were looking for a blonde man with blue eyes. Apparently, they were talking about this young man. They said they would come here, so Beniti decided to look for the guy and warn him. After a brief silence, Carson asked her where she had to go. She replied that she needed to go to Kubaran and that she only needed some money to rent a carriage. Carson exhaled tiredly, and then the heroine said she only needed a carriage. However, the guy said that what he meant was that he was also going to Kubaran. The heroine wondered why he had to go there, that he hadn't forgot. Then the boy agreed and said he would take her there. This way, he would pay her for her help, because he doesn't like debts and therefore never gets into them. He doesn't have much money left because he has already given it to someone. Therefore, he invited Beniti to go to Kubaran together. Soon the girl already refused to get into the carriage. She didn't know what to think. She didn't understand why she was so unlucky. Then, Carson said that today they would spend the night on the street. They would walk a little through the forest to a hollow, and there would be a camping area. It's a pretty safe place, so the girl shouldn't worry about it. Beniti couldn't believe her ears. Had Carson really tried to calm her down? Normally, he would never do this. When the man got into the carriage, Beniti asked him why he was going to Kubaran. Carson asked her a counter-question, asking her why she ran away from home. But the heroine replied that she would return in a couple of days. In her heart, she understood that she ran away because she didn't want their wedding to take place. And then she asked her question again. The boy replied that he wanted to avoid an engagement. The girl was very surprised by this answer and asked him if he really didn't want to get engaged. Carson replied that he didn't even know his chosen one. The heroine was shocked by this answer because he is the crown prince, and this is inevitable for him. Then, the boy said that these were not all the reasons. The girl asked him what he hadn't told her yet, but the boy had no intention of telling her all the details. Beniti said that he himself started the conversation about it. Suddenly, she saw a book in his hands. It looked like a magic textbook. All members of the imperial family know how to use magic. This is something that is passed down from generation to generation. And even among them, Carson stands out. He is always absorbed in his studies and doesn't let go of it. The girl wondered why someone would kill the prince if it was really just to get rid of his family, or if he was the target from the beginning. When Beniti and Carson arrived at the designated place, the girl got out of the carriage and gasped in surprise. It was a pretty nice place. People were intense and chatting happily with each other. Beniti had heard of this place. She had never been here. It was like a summer camp. Suddenly, someone came up from behind and gave her a sandwich. It turned out to be Carson. He brought them some food. He said that there are many people here, so animals will come closer to them. Therefore, the girl didn't have to be afraid of anyone eating her at night. The man who brought them here said it was time to leave. Beniti asked if he was going to bed and asked where his sleeping bag was. But Carson replied that there was no such thing here. They only had one blanket. The heroine was surprised because he said he took everything he needed. Then the boy replied that someone took all the money, so he couldn't buy sleeping bags. Beniti asked how they would sleep in this weather. When night fell, the girl realized she couldn't sleep at all. In theory, he and Carson were strangers. But in fact, she remembered she was going to marry him, and this thought scared her a lot. She would never have thought she would lie down with someone she didn't even lie down with on their wedding night. Suddenly, Carson jumped from his seat and told the girl to stop tossing and turning in bed. She was disturbing his sleep. Suddenly, the man ran out of the carriage and brought a bag with something heavy for the girl. It turned out to be a hot stone. He asked the girl to finally lie down and fall asleep. Beniti thanked him. She hugged the bag with the hot stone and lay down in her spot, but she didn't understand why he was suddenly so kind. In the morning, the coachman approached them. He said he had slept well thanks to the hot stone the young master gave him. Carson asked him to bring him water. He wanted soup with pancakes for breakfast, and the man said he would definitely prepare everything. However, the boy said he only needed water as he would cook himself. Beniti was surprised. She couldn't believe the guy was cooking himself. Carson said he wouldn't poison the food, so she had nothing to worry about. When the food was ready, Beniti and the coachman commented that it was incredibly delicious. The girl didn't know that Carson knew how to cook, and that it was also very tasty. She couldn't believe the prince could know about this. The guy said the food was still hot, so they shouldn't rush. Beniti looked at him in surprise. She couldn't believe that was the man she now knew. He seemed completely different to her. In her past life, she hoped he would at least give her a hand if she fell. He immediately left when he saw her like that. Even when she cut herself on the rose he left or fell into the fountain, he always abandoned her. He tried not to touch the girl at formal events. Sometimes, Beniti sent him a letter saying that she would visit him soon. Shortly after, a terrifying snake awaited her outside the door. But now Carson is different both in appearance and character from the man she knew before. Therefore, the girl didn't understand why he was so cruel to her. Soon they arrived in Rizos in autumn. There are many tourists here. The local hotel owner said they had no rooms left at this late hour, so they had to look for another place. Carson asked the coachman to go to the tavern that had the stable. He told Beniti that they had no other option. They would have to go to the monastery. The girl didn't understand what monastery he was talking about. Then the boy turned his head and pointed at something. It was a huge, sinister building, from which a kind of gloomy atmosphere emanated. Soon Beniti and Carson went to the monastery. From time to time, several suspicious people hiding in the corners watched them. This scared the heroine very much, and she herself, without realizing it, pressed against Carson. The boy looked at her in disgust and asked her what she was doing. Then, the girl abruptly pulled away from him, thinking that she had touched members of the imperial family without permission, which was considered a real crime. She apologized to him for this offense. Then the young man asked her not to cling to him anymore. Beniti apologized to him again, saying that she was very scared and didn't mean to do that. Soon the boy told her that they had come to the right place. In front of them, a tall chapel with a cross at the top could be seen. The girl became cautious. She didn't understand why Carson didn't go ahead. Then she decided that this time she would be bolder and go first. However, the boy stopped her, saying that he had a bad feeling. Beniti didn't understand why he decided to stop now, because she had had a bad feeling for a long time. But Carson said that wasn't what he was talking about, that something was wrong in the monastery. The thing is, there was no light inside. When the heroine realized this, she got very scared and pressed against the boy again. Then Carson took her hand and asked her to stay here for now. However, the girl ran after him and clung to him again, saying she wouldn't stay here. Carson was displeased and asked how such a coward decided to leave the house. Beniti said it was dangerous to go where there was no light, but the guy replied that it was strange, so they should go find out what was going on there. The girl was shocked by this answer, because he is the prince's heir. He must not endanger his life. Thanks to her, the search party did not take Carson, but she didn't know what would happen in the future. Besides, someone wanted to kill him anyway. Father Beniti always praised Carson. He read that such a person is born once every 1,000 years. Many thought the same, so the whole village had no choice but to mourn. However, Beniti would not allow anyone to kill him, and she needed to keep her promise to the princess. So she asked Carson not to go there and offered to spend the night outside. However, the boy insisted. He said he had to go there. Then the heroine lunged at him, hugging him tightly and pressing him against her. Carson was displeased and said that she had no right to touch him. Suddenly, a man appeared behind them, who said they couldn't go there. Beniti and Carson turned around confused, not understanding who was talking to them. It was a young boy. He said that it is now forbidden to approach the monastery. The thing is that all the monks died after eating a diseased pig. Their bodies were inside, and that's why no one was allowed to go there. The girl thought she remembered something similar from a past life. A plague began in the monastery that claimed the lives of about 50 people. Rosalie came to this plague-ridden place, but she didn't get infected. Then, Carson asked the stranger what he was doing there at that moment. The boy replied that his sister was hungry, so he went to fetch water. Carson was surprised. Is he really going to feed her with this? The stranger said that's how you can fill your stomach, but the young man stopped him. He handed him a small bag of crackers and told him they were hard and tasteless, but that they satisfied hunger well. The stranger asked why he was giving them to him, and Carson replied that he was simply paying for information. Then, the stranger asked the couple to follow him. Beniti asked Carson if they should go, but the prince did not answer her and simply followed the stranger. Soon, everyone arrived at the house, where the girl was waiting for them. She was surprised to see the travelers. She said it was the first time she had seen such unusual travelers. Her brother gave her some crackers, so the girl was incredibly happy. Beniti suddenly realized that those people looked quite familiar to her. Then the boy decided to introduce himself and said his name was Reika Hemmels. The heroine suddenly realized that they were a brother and sister with purple hair from the Hemmels family. Reika and Janie. She didn't think she would find them here. Memories of her past life, when she followed Carson, appeared before her eyes again. At one point, she tripped over a stone and suddenly fell. However, the prince only looked at her in disgust and moved on, with no intention of helping her at all. At that moment, Reiko approached her, extended his hand and asked her if she was okay. He always had the smile of a sweet and shy boy, but despite his innocent appearance, he was a knight with fearsome skills who accompanied Carson. His younger sister, Janie, was also an outstanding fighter. However, after Carson's death, they tried to bring the Beniti family to Duke Kubaran, but they died. Then Reika asked the strangers what their names were. The prince replied that his name was Kar, and Beniti said her name was Tasha. Soon night fell, and Janie decided to share her bed during the trip, and they slept together all night. In the morning, Beniti heard strange shouts outside the window. Soon Janie woke up. The girls went out the window to see what was happening. It turned out that Reika was arguing with a stranger. He said that soon Reika and his sister would starve, so it would be better if they sent Janie to the Viscount as a maid. However, Reika said he would never give up because he understood the true meaning of this decision. Janie would end up a concubine when she came of age, or be sold, another mark on the family. And he knew that the man had been promised payment for it. The man looked at Reika with disgust and said that he clearly still didn't understand the whole situation. His parents died from a diseased pig in the monastery. Now all their father's possessions would be taken from them. Thus, Reika and Janie would no longer have anyone to protect them. Then the boy said that they would do their best and handle the matter themselves. He was allowed to farm, so the man should have left. Suddenly, the man yelled and ran towards Reika, saying that he had come to them because no one else would help them. And this child dared to speak to him in that tone. Janie got scared and cried. Beniti hugged her tightly, trying to calm her down. At that moment, Carson stood between the man and Reika. The man fell to the ground and screamed convulsively. There was a doll in his hands. Everyone present couldn't believe their eyes. An adult man was really afraid of a toy. Then Carson said a single word, "Die," and immediately tears welled up in the man's eyes. He stood up and immediately ran away. Beniti and Janie watched everything that happened in bewilderment. The heroine realized that it was magic. She remembered a moment from her past life, when she encountered a snake outside Carson's office. The girl discovered that it was magically created from an ordinary ribbon. He disliked her so much, but still, despite his hatred, his disdain, and how cold he was towards her, she could only endure it. At that moment, Janie ran out of the house. She ran to her brother and asked him if he was okay. Carson looked out the window, where Beniti was watching him. The girl thought that she had endured all this because she liked the young man. She didn't understand why he hated her so much. There was an awkward pause between Beniti and the prince. They just looked at each other in silence. Suddenly, Reika turned to Carson and asked him what the guy had just done. At that moment, Beniti came out with them. She said it was magic. Janie and Reika were extremely surprised, because only a select few could use magic. Carson said he was just a low-level magician, but Reika was still amazed. It turned out that passers-by came running at the scream and asked what was happening here. A little girl approached Carson and asked him to give her the doll. However, the prince replied that he would not. The girl started screaming because he was already an adult. He definitely didn't need dolls, but Carson still had no intention of giving her the toy. Beniti watched his argument with the girl with an open smile. She understood that he couldn't tell anyone that he was the crown prince. Then the prince shouted loudly that he was not going to give her the toy. Everyone standing in the street suddenly fell silent. The little girl began to cry loudly, drawing everyone's attention around her. Then Janie approached her and told her that she had something better. She pulled out of her pocket a beautiful scarf with flowers that she herself had embroidered. The girl really liked this gift. Beniti exhaled upon realizing that there was at least one reasonable person among them. After a while, Beniti and Carson gathered their things and headed for the carriage. It was time to say goodbye to Reika and Janie. The girl said that the soup with pancakes was very delicious. The prince only replied that it was nothing special. He always prepares them when he travels. The heroine noticed that this guy doesn't know how to communicate with people at all. Reika thanked the boy for his help and told him he would never forget this. The prince replied that he would also always remember how they were protected. And then the men shook hands. Beniti wondered how much she knew in her past life, immediately after Carson's death. If Reika became distressed, they had a special relationship, and if history repeated itself and he couldn't protect his master, he would go crazy again. Therefore, the girl was determined to prevent this from happening. Soon their carriage arrived in Kubaran. It was very cold in this place. The girl turned around and addressed Carson, telling him that they had had a good time. However, the prince didn't let her finish. He asked her to be careful and not get into anything, because many terrible things were happening on the streets. Then he mounted his horse and left. Beniti didn't understand how she should interpret that phrase as a good wish or something more. Suddenly, the girl realized that she had been left completely alone in an unfamiliar place. She cursed Carson. It was completely abnormal for him to leave her alone like that. However, despite the cold, the heroine reached her destination. She said her surname was Reishi and that she came from Reynosa. The guard looked at her in disbelief. He said that the Duke doesn't accept just anyone, and that it would be better for the girl to leave on her own before he called the soldiers. Then, Beniti said that she had reasons to dress like this, but she is actually from the Reisha family. She is the daughter of Duke Philip Reisha, a student of Duke Duckrose. So, the guard had to go tell him that Beniti had arrived. The man said he needed to verify the girl's words, and at that moment, someone approached them from behind. Beniti turned around and opened her mouth in surprise. Carson was behind her. He smiled slyly and said that he also wanted to check if it was true or not. The heroine immediately shouted, asking what he had forgotten here. The girl was worried about how much he had heard. To her dismay, the man had managed to hear the family's young lady's name earlier, because she was one of the finalists for the role of the Crown Prince's bride. Beniti tried to stay calm, but panic erupted. Had they really caught her? The girl understood that she was in trouble, because how can she admit that, being a potential bride, she ran away from home and didn't violate the imperial family's orders. Other people had an idea, because Carson had not yet revealed his identity. He only said that he didn't want to get engaged to anyone. The heroine realized that she only had one way out. She needed to pretend they didn't know each other, so she said that her name was actually Beniti. She decided that she herself could know who the boy really was. There was no reason to be ashamed of her name. Suddenly, they were distracted from the conversation by a male voice. He asked what happened to His Highness and why he had come. He said that he heard that Miss Beniti was also here. The heroine realized that she was definitely in trouble now. Then she turned to the man and told him that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. And it turned out to be Duke Duckrose. The man said he was glad to see her and asked her why she had come here with the prince. Carson looked inquisitively at the girl, as if expecting questions from her. So, Beniti decided to pretend that she was surprised to be standing next to the crown prince. The Duke asked, didn't she really know that before? The girl smiled, but her appearance gave her away. She was clearly nervous. The Duke offered to go inside and sort out the situation during dinner. He said he would prepare a bath and food for the guests. The girl thought that now she wouldn't be able to talk informally with the boy. She also wondered, since he found out she was the real Beniti, would he really turn her into a snake again? When everyone entered the house, the Duke offered the guests something to eat. Then the prince asked if this girl was really Beniti Reishi. He said he remembered her as a blonde. Then the Duke said that the girl's hair color changed after that day. Beniti looked at the men in bewilderment. She was originally blonde, and as she grew older, the color changed to silver. But she didn't understand what the man meant when he spoke of a special day. Then she remembered that Carson had said something similar in a previous life. One day he turned to her and asked if her hair had always been silver. The girl said that her hair color changed over time. After this, the prince's face immediately darkened. Now Beniti didn't understand if they had actually met before. Then he conceded that the girl's round face had lost weight and become like a pancake. And her hair color was different, so he didn't recognize her. The Duke, laughing, asked if the prince hadn't seen Miss Beniti since she was 8 years old. Carson said that he heard that Beniti was very ill. Then, the Duke said that the two were very close, and it was a pity they hadn't seen each other in so long. Beniti was very surprised by these words. She didn't believe they were close, because she didn't remember anything about it. Then the prince turned to her and asked her to raise her right hand. Then he asked her to pinch his cheeks. The girl was outraged by such a request. She didn't understand what he wanted from her. Then he asked her if she was already sick. The heroine replied that she hadn't been sick since she had a fever in childhood, but that the earlier memories were very blurry. The prince asked her if she had forgotten him too. The girl thought that in a past life, he asked her the same thing. Perhaps he hated her because she didn't remember anything. Then she said that she really didn't remember anything, and the prince asked her why she had run away from home under the name Tasha. The Duke was surprised and asked if Beniti had really run away from home. The prince asked the question again. He wondered why his potential bride was here and not at the ceremony. Then, Beniti decided to ask him what he was doing here, because he should also be present at the ceremony. At that moment, the Duke's maid entered the room. She asked him if he needed to wash the garment, and then showed something she had in her hands. Carson timidly looked away, and the Duke looked surprised at what was in the maid's hands. He asked if His Highness still carried this doll with him. Then he said that this doll was brought and given by Beniti. The girl was surprised because she didn't remember this at all. Then, the Duke asked the maid to wash this doll. Beniti decided to ask why she gave this doll to the prince, but the man said he didn't know. However, it is now his property, so the girl should forget about it. Beniti remembered the moment when the prince didn't want to give the toy to the little girl. She said that, apparently, this doll was very important to him. Carson said it was his, he didn't care who gave it to him. Then, the Duke asked the prince if he had found the sheet music, but the guy said he was still looking. Hearing this, the girl was surprised if they were really talking about those same witch notes. Then she realized that the princess's words were true, and thanks to Carson's discovery, she was able to return to the past. The prince asked why he didn't see Grandma Rose anywhere. Then the Duke replied that the nanny had left the mansion. Carson also jumped up and caught her and started shouting. He didn't understand how the man allowed her to leave. However, the Duke said that he felt he had held her too long, so he decided it was time to let her go. Suddenly, the prince mentioned a name for the tiaras, and Beniti, hearing it, immediately remembered that it belonged to the late former empress. Duke Dukrot had a daughter, and she was the empress of the Reinos Empire. Beniti never met her, but rumors said she was a very kind person. But she died before she could give birth to a child. And in a week, Carson's mother became the second empress. Apparently, this woman was the nanny of the past empress. However, she didn't understand why Carson was so upset about it. Then the prince stood at the table and said that he should leave, and then he headed for the exit. The girl thought something was wrong here. Then the Duke said that we are scared too. Maybe we should go to bed. If she ate everything, she would have to go home tomorrow morning. Soon morning arrived. Beniti got ready and left her room. In the hallway, she met the prince, who was clearly waiting for her. She wondered if he had really come to see her off. Then she asked if His Highness had slept well. Then he said that he had to leave. Suddenly, the prince approached her and placed his palm on her forehead. The girl didn't understand what happened to the young man. She laughed nervously, because even though he was the crown prince, he couldn't touch other people without permission. Then, Carson said that the girl was fine. He said goodbye to her and told her that they would meet at the ceremony. Beniti looked at him in bewilderment. She didn't understand why he had been talking nonsense since yesterday. Carson turned around and smiled, telling the girl not to be too surprised. because he would look a little different. He explained that he was not actually a scientist with red hair and eyes. But the girl was not worried about this. She was surprised that the ceremony was not canceled. She thought that the ceremony had been canceled a long time ago, and she was excluded from the list of candidates. So she ran away. Soon the girl went out to her carriage. The Duke asked her to convey his best wishes to her father, and also that he would like to see him. Then Beniti got into the carriage and closed the door behind her. It was a magical carriage, pulled by Pegasus, which carried the girl back home. The heroine thought about running away from home, hoping that she would be expelled, but everything became more complicated. She didn't understand why she and Carson had a good relationship when she was 8 years old, and why he gave her a doll. Besides, it seemed to her that morning he was genuinely worried about her. Then she decided that she would need to learn more from her parents. When Beniti returned home, her father immediately rushed out, looking extremely worried. He ran to his daughter and asked her what had happened. Then the coachman handed him a letter, saying that the sender was the Duke of Duckrot. The man quickly read the letter and asked him to tell the Duke that he had received it. Beniti, as if asking her father for forgiveness, said that she knew she had bothered him a lot. The truth is, she didn't want to be a candidate for a bride. Her father said that she had no idea how much he worried about her. He took her hands and said that he told the imperial family that Beniti was not feeling well. Therefore, she couldn't go to the ceremony, and the imperial family suffered everything. However, now that he realized that she really didn't want to be part of this, he didn't know what to do. The girl sighed tiredly. Apparently, it was not her destiny to miss the ceremony. Her father apologized for sending her to places she didn't want to go. Beniti replied that that wasn't the case, because he had already done enough for her. She thought to herself that this time she wouldn't make the same mistake. She squeezed her father's hands tightly and swore to herself that she would make sure she was expelled. When the girl entered the house, her brother and father ran towards her and asked her where she had been all this time. The mother asked if she had really been in the north, because she was wearing unusual winter clothes. Then Beniti said that she wanted to ask them something. Well, I asked my mother if she had met the crown prince before. The woman looked at her silently, and her face immediately darkened. Then, suddenly, she laughed and said that she had completely forgotten that she had urgent matters, so she needed to urgently attend a meeting. Her brother ran after his mother, and then Beniti was left alone with her father. She asked why her mother and Bahrain were acting so strangely, but the man didn't answer either. But instead, he invited the girl inside and decided to talk to her about everything over a cup of tea. He said that the emperor was in close contact with Duke Duckrose, so as the Duke's student, he was also invited to the imperial palace. And because of this, in Beniti's childhood, she often saw the crown prince. Then the girl decided to ask about the day her hair color started to change. The man lowered his head and did not answer, which bothered his daughter. Then he said that right before her birthday, she had a high fever and lost her memory. As far as he remembered, the cause of the fever was a severe flu. The girl thought, from Carson's words, it seemed as if something special had happened that day. And if her father was telling the truth, then why was the prince interested in her well-being? Then she asked her father if he knew why she gave the doll to the crown prince, to which her father asked her if she had actually met his highness. In this case, he understood why Beniti had so many questions. He said that when the girl was little, and her mother made her an amulet doll so she wouldn't get sick. She, Beniti, was very kind, so she didn't want the doll to get sick instead. The next day, the crown prince already had this doll. He said that Beniti gave him the doll. Now the heroine understood clearly how everything really happened. However, she still wondered why her mother and brother were acting so strangely. It seemed to her that they weren't saying anything. At that moment, Tasha entered the room with tears in her eyes. Beniti said she knew the maid was very worried about her. At that moment, Tasha turned around and indifferently said that she had prepared a bath for the girl, so she could leave. The heroine immediately realized that the girl was very angry with her. Soon the heroine went to the bath, and all the tiredness vanished from her. She apologized to Tasha and told her that she had every right to be angry with her for running away. Then, the maid said that she was not angry with her mistress at all, but that the Duchess was very worried about her daughter. Tasha asked what was going on with Beniti and why she didn't want to study with the prince when others couldn't even dream of such a thing. But the girl quickly changed the subject because she didn't want to answer this question. Then the maid asked her where she had been all this time. The girl replied that she was in the north and promised to tell her all the details if the maid wasn't angry with her. Joy immediately appeared on Tasha's face. She said she definitely wouldn't get angry, and then the girl began her story. After a while, Beniti met with the prince and asked him if a young woman could be as restless as she was. But she could think of running away at 17. The girl managed to grab his hand before he could take her by the shoulders. She was taught self-defense in her lessons as a future princess. She said she knew Carson was worried about her, and that's why she apologized to him. Then he asked her why she ran away so abruptly that time. This happened at the moment she asked if she had seen the prince before. Carson wanted to withdraw his hand, but the girl didn't let him and then promised to tell him everything. She said that then she became very ill. Everyone got scared because Beniti's hair color started to change. Besides, she lost her memory, and no one else started bringing up this topic. She quickly left because she didn't want to answer these questions. Then, the heroine noticed that the prince, apparently, was not in the mood to tell her the whole truth. Then, Carson said that it would be better if she didn't ask her mother these questions, because she blames herself for the fact that her daughter got sick at that time. Therefore, it was better not to remind her of this again. The next day arrived, and it was the day of the awards ceremony. Beniti arrived at the imperial palace and was incredibly shocked by what she saw. All those present chanted her name and bowed as soon as she appeared before their eyes. People shouted her name and wished her luck, saying that she would definitely win. Tasha was incredibly surprised by what she saw, because her mistress was very popular. The heroine replied that that frightened her very much. If this popularity continues, the imperial family will not be able to ignore public opinion, and therefore, she will easily be able to become Carson's bride. This was her last chance. She needed to make some kind of mistake that would ruin her popularity. What if Tasha started talking to the palace guests? She thanked everyone for their kindness towards her mistress. The heroine looked completely beyond despair and realized that the maid, on the contrary, enjoyed the situation. Tasha continued talking to those present, thanking them for their wonderful relationship with Beniti. Soon the girls entered the palace. The heroine realized that now she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The awards ceremony will take place in the main hall, and the emperor will be present at the event. And the empress, the crown prince, should also be present. He never appeared in her past life, and the heroine hoped that he wouldn't be there today either. Then she remembered his words that they would see each other at the ceremony, and that he asked her not to be scared, and because he would look different. Beniti felt extremely uncomfortable. When she arrived to wait for the candidates, Rosalia immediately ran to greet her. She told her that she had heard that the girl was very sick and asked her if she felt better. Beniti laughed and said that she definitely felt better. She said it was just a bad cold. When the girls sat down at the table, Rosalia said that she was glad that everything was fine now, and the heroine thanked her for her concern. Then the girl said that not only she, but everyone around her was worried about her, because all these people who were outside came for Beniti's sake. At that moment, Rumina joined the conversation. She congratulated Beniti on the fact that she had almost been chosen as crown princess. She and Rosalie could simply be bridesmaids. Rosalie asked why Rumina was being so rude and asked her to apologize for her words. The girl laughed and asked why she shouldn't become Beniti's maid in that case, since they were competitors, and the girl found it very amusing, taking her side. These words made Rosalie very angry. She said that with such a character, Rumina would definitely not be able to become a princess. Then the heroine asked the girls to calm down, saying that Rumina has the right to speak her mind. At that moment, Ilika entered the hall. She said that the waiting room was very noisy. All the girls turned to the housekeeper and greeted her. The woman said that she didn't know which of them would become princess, but it wasn't normal for their princess voice to be heard even in the hallway. She hoped that this wouldn't happen again in the future. Then she said that everyone should go to the next hall because the emperor, the empress, and the crown prince were already waiting for them. Hearing this, Beniti became furious. Did the prince really come to the ceremony? She didn't understand how the wind had brought him here, but she obediently went to the right place along with the other girls. Soon, everyone found themselves at the doors of the throne room. Ilika greeted the emperor and empress from behind the doors. She reported that the 3 chosen candidates as potential princesses had arrived. The emperor was already waiting for them. Sitting on his throne, he was glad to finally see 3 beautiful and intelligent candidates, one of whom would become his son's bride. The empress laughed and said that she was in a bit of a hurry, and the man said that it was all because of his good mood. Then the woman asked all the girls to come closer to her. The girls greeted the imperial family. Only Beniti looked incredibly shattered. The crown prince was watching them all. This time he looked as he should, with dark hair and red eyes. The emperor said that he had heard that Miss Beniti had suffered from an illness, and he asked how the girl was feeling now. The heroine trembled with emotion and thanked the man for worrying about her. She also replied that she had already fully recovered. The emperor smiled back and said that such an answer made him very happy. Then the prince turned to her. He told her that Miss Beniti truly looked very healthy, and then asked her what exactly she was sick with. The heroine laughed nervously. She said she had a cold, and she realized that she had the feeling that the prince was making fun of her. Then Carson asked her again if she really had a cold. The girl was incredibly angry at what he was doing. These are the questions. Did he really want to see her just for this? After all, it was he who touched her forehead to check her condition and confuse her. However, she decided that there was nothing to hide, because he knew everything anyway. Then she said that she was so sick that she didn't even remember anything. However, people say that she was very ill, even terminally. The prince said that for someone who claimed to be so sick, she had a very healthy complexion. So he decided to ask the question. However, he was glad that the girl had fully recovered. Beniti smiled nervously and thanked him for his attention. Then she suddenly stopped, which attracted the attention of the other candidates. Then Alika approached them and handed them a box containing 3 necklaces. It was a pendant with the imperial crest of Reynos for the bride candidates. With this pendant, you can easily go anywhere in the empire. This is a pendant that opens any door in this world. Then, the housekeeper announced that the ceremony would begin soon. She opened the doors leading to the palace garden for the girls. A crowd of people had already gathered there, eager to see the princess candidates. Jubilant applause sounded everywhere, and Rosalia and Rumina thanked those who had come for their support. Among them, only Beniti was soaked in cold sweat. She didn't understand what to do. She couldn't say that she couldn't attend the last ceremony because she ran away from home, but she still had to leave a bad impression of herself. At that moment, an idea came to her. She caught her shoe heel with one foot, forcing herself to fall. The next moment, she flew face forward, right under the deafening shouts of the crowd. A moment later, she was already lying face down on the ground. Rumina and Rosalie immediately called for help. Soon the heroine got up and sat on her knees. She felt a lot of pain, but she understood that her plan had worked. She fell to the ground in front of everyone to lose her dignity as a noble lady. She didn't even forget the faint, careless cries. The girl understood that this wouldn't change her image immediately, but this way she could change her image. Slowly, step by step. After a while, she met with Tasha. The maid was very emotional and asked her if everything was all right with her mistress, to which the girl replied that she simply twisted her ankle, but overall it didn't hurt that much. And suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a man's voice. When the girls turned around, they saw in front of them a tall, blonde man, and blue-eyed, wearing a gray suit. Tasha immediately asked her mistress who this man was. The stranger said he was Beniti's friend. They met on a trip. Then, the maid assumed that her place was not returning home, because on the trip she met such a handsome man. And then, without introducing himself, he said his name was Carr. Tasha was delighted with the stranger, but Beniti looked extremely perplexed. Then, the man said that he needed to talk to Beniti alone, and asked the maid to leave them alone. Then Tasha immediately jumped off the bench and ran away. Finally, the girl said that her mistress is a bride candidate and styled with the crown prince's patronymic, so the man cannot have other intentions or feelings for her mistress. Then she wished the heroine a pleasant conversation and walked away. Soon, Carr and Beniti were left alone. The girl asked what the young man wanted to tell her, to which Carr smiled and said that she was a runaway girl. The heroine immediately ran to him and covered his mouth with her hands. She asked him why the runaway prince called her that, to which the boy replied that if he had that hair color, then she should call him by the name Carr. He said that the girl was a good liar when she ran away from home. He couldn't wait to see how surprised the people of the empire who supported her would be. But Beniti didn't understand what he was talking about. Then, the man said that at that moment, she was deceiving the people of the empire, and if her secret is revealed, something irreparable could happen. The girl didn't know how to respond to this, and the man continued. He said that she, like him, ran away from home because she didn't want to attend the ceremony. Apparently, the people's love and their general idea that she was a good candidate for crown prince frightened her very much. The girl didn't understand what Carr wanted from her. Then, the man asked her not to reveal that he was transforming into this form. He also asked her to always answer his call whenever he called her. In this case, he also promised to keep her secret. Beniti said that she agreed with the first condition, but she didn't understand the second one at all. She didn't understand why His Highness would call her. The girl recalled that before, when she approached him, he turned away and rejected her. Then Carr said that maybe he would need to call her, because something like what happened recently when they met in that carriage could happen. He didn't know what could happen in the future, so he might need the girl's help again. With these words, Carr walked away, leaving Beniti alone. The girl shouted at him that she would never need the prince's help. Beniti understood that she had to leave her place as a bride candidate as soon as possible. Just think, she would be called by the person who made her more unhappy than others. There was no point in getting close to him. She simply wanted to return to her place, where she had nothing to do with the crown prince. However, the girl was soon forced to attend the trial. One of the maids acted as a witness. She said that she saw Miss Rumina tripping Miss Beniti. The judge asked Rumina if she admitted that she had tripped Beniti at the ceremony to knock her down. The heroine didn't understand what kind of nonsense was going on. Rumina did not answer the judge's question. Then Beniti thought that day she definitely fell on her own. However, suddenly her memory began to clear, and she remembered the moment Rumina approached her from behind. She put her foot on her heel, forcing the girl to fall forward. Then, Beniti thanked everyone for worrying so much about her, and then said that she believed the trial should be fair. She said that it was indeed her fault that she fell, and it coincidentally happened that she was standing next to Miss Rumina's feet. Therefore, she asked the judge to judge wisely so that there would be no innocent victims. All those present in court demanded that Rumina be punished and removed from the list of bride candidates. Beniti was incredibly angry that this trial was taking such a turn, because that was not at all what she wanted. Then, the judge said that there were many witnesses to this incident, but the victim denied everything. Therefore, they had to stop this trial and declare Rumina innocent. At that moment, Rosalie intervened in the conversation. She said that she would also testify. The judge said that the girl must be serious and balanced in her testimony. Rosalie said that she swears to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Then she said that she clearly saw Miss Beniti tripping Miss Rumina. The heroine realized that this time she had made a total mistake. If Rumina leaves as a candidate, she will have to leave too. Then, in the end, Rosalie would replace the crown prince's wife, and the heroine couldn't leave things like that. Then she asked Rosalie to tell the truth, because it wasn't Rumina's fault. The girl asked Beniti what she was talking about. She said that all the people of the empire are worried about her, and that there is no need to hide the truth. Then, the girls turned their gaze towards Rumina. She silently looked ahead and seemed very downcast. The heroine thought that Rumina's family would never truly love her. That's why she couldn't lie either, and that's why she kept silent. At that moment, a stranger in a black cloak entered the hall. At first, Beniti didn't notice him, thinking it would be better if Rumina just lied, saying it wasn't her, and everything would end. Then the stranger said that he would also testify. The girl recognized this voice. It seemed very familiar to her. It turned out that the stranger was the crown prince himself. He addressed the judge and told him that he would also like to act as a witness. The judge was surprised that His Highness, the prince himself, came here to personally hear the testimony. Carson replied that first of all he would like to express his sincere respect and gratitude to the people of Reynosa. However, the verdict must be rendered fairly. He explained that on the day of the ceremony, Miss Beniti fell on her own. He saw it clearly with his own eyes. That's why Miss Rumina was absolutely innocent. The trial soon ended. The heroine left, and the townspeople immediately rushed over, saying that despite the distorted information about the accusation, she remained honest. That's how the crown prince's wife should be. Suddenly, Beniti wondered where Carson had gone. Suddenly, near the carriage, she met Rumina. She didn't understand why the girl was blocking her way. The heroine wanted to pretend she hadn't noticed her, but Rumina turned to her and asked why she helped her, because she really tried to trip her. Then the girl said that she simply told everything as it was, which was useless. Rumina shouted because they were rivals. If she had lost the trial, she would have been excluded from the selection. So why did Beniti take her side? The heroine said that she only wants a fair competition. There's no point in looking for something to find fault with your opponent and get them out of your way, so you can win that way. Then Rumina shouted that she really tried to trip her because she wanted to shame her. Beniti asked if she really wanted to provoke her with this, or if she was offended by her forgiveness. She demanded an explanation from Rumina. Then the girl said that she would think about thanking Beniti for this, since, according to her, She was only telling the truth. The heroine smiled, thinking about what exactly she expected in gratitude. And she greeted the girl. Rumina finally shouted that she hated Beniti. The heroine thought that in any case it was good that she told the truth, because after such behavior from Rumina, Rosalie became even more hateful towards her. However, she understood that, no matter what, she needed to correct her situation. At that moment, Carson approached the girl and asked her why she was muttering to herself again. Then Beniti said that she did well in court. The boy thought she would thank him, but the girl chuckled and said that His Highness was only trying to restore justice. Then she asked him if he was trying to help her. Then Carson asked if she had really fallen on purpose, because at first he thought she wanted to help Miss Rumina. The heroine wanted to avoid answering and said that no one would fall on purpose, but the boy said that he was sure she would have. Then the girl said that he was just pointing his finger at the sky. Carson replied that the eyes of the imperial family are different from the eyes of common people. Their gaze is much sharper and more precise, so it should not be underestimated. Beniti thought that she didn't know this, not even in a past life. In a way, it's natural, because she hardly even spoke to him in a past life. However, she didn't understand why the prince, who avoided and hated her in a past life, is now communicating with her this way. Could it really be because they became a little closer during the trip? Carson said that it was all about the girl's behavior. He observes her, and during all this time, he came to an interesting conclusion. He said that she was doing everything she could because she didn't want to become his bride. The girl was surprised. She didn't understand how he had guessed it. Beniti said that all of this was nonsense. Then Carson asked her if he was a prince who was always wrong. Was it worth making unfounded guesses? He guessed that the girl would say he was wrong again. Suddenly, he noticed a locket around her neck, which was recently presented in the throne room. He said that it suits her very well and is pleasing to the eye. Beniti thanked him and honored such a compliment, but the boy said that she asked him to call him Car when his eyes were blue. The heroine thought about when everything went wrong and why Carson is so kind and friendly towards her, because now it's useless to change everything and be kind to him. Several days passed since that moment. One of Beniti's maids reported that she had received something. It turned out to be some kind of helpful gift. The box contained magnificent blue gems. Tasha suggested that this gift might have been sent by someone from a family involved in precious stones, because these jewels were very rare. It was blue topaz. Beniti thought. It seemed that Rumina was still grateful. Even if she couldn't say the right words at that moment, it was clear that her gratitude was sincere. Then, the maid reported that the girl had also received another gift. It turned out to be from Mr. Carson. The heroine immediately shouted and asked for it to be returned. She suggested that if she pretended the package went to the wrong address and returned it, no one could file a claim, but Tasha said that couldn't be done. Then the girls opened the box. The maid was very surprised by what she saw inside. It turned out to be the same doll, but the maid didn't understand why the master sent it to Beniti, because she was no longer a child. She didn't understand why he sent her such an incomprehensible gift compared to Miss Rumina's. Then, the heroine took a photograph that was in the box with the doll. It showed snow-covered tree branches, and on the back there was a signature with which Carson said it was time to return it. Tasha noticed that this doll was very familiar to her. Then, the heroine said that this was a guardian doll, which her mother gave her when she was little. Then, the maid remembered that the lady gave this doll to her daughter, so that she would get sick instead of her. Besides, if you think about it, this doll is very similar to the girl from childhood. Then the heroine asked the maid if she knew that she was close to His Highness, the Crown Prince. After a brief silence, Tasha asked if Beniti was close to the prince. Then the girl realized that the maid, apparently, didn't remember this. Then she asked her if she would perhaps remind her later that she had a fever. Tasha said that she was 8 years old at the time, so she vaguely remembered that Beniti became seriously ill after going to the imperial palace. The heroine couldn't believe it. Did she really get sick after visiting the imperial palace? The maid confirmed that everything was exactly like that. Then, Beniti wondered what happened at the imperial palace back then, because there was a reason why her father and her brother said nothing. However, right now, she needed to focus on getting out of the selection for the crown prince's consort, and not on this. At this time, a bazaar opened in Reynosa. At the bazaar for children of aristocrats, she was going to correct all the mistakes she had made. Soon the heroine began preparations. Tasha asked her if it was true that she wanted to display all these things at a charity bazaar. to which the girl replied that she would sell everything. Then, the maid said that this pink dress could not be sold, that she had to put in a lot of effort to get it. A war almost broke out between her and the cruel Haney over this dress. The heroine was tired. She sighed and said that she knew about her maid's extraordinary efforts. But the outfit, obtained with such difficulty, must be shown to them so broadly that as many nobles as possible recognize its value. And the best place for this is the bazaar. In fact, Beniti had a completely different plan. After selling her dress as the most expensive at the bazaar, she would buy another expensive dress, and extravagant to repeat the impressive appearance. Therefore, her rating would drop below the pedestal. People will say that public funds are at risk and will never accept her as the prince's wife. Soon the girl dressed in a red dress and was ready to go out, but Tasha was surprised that she was going out in that outfit. She said that the lady needs to wear underskirts for the dress to look more voluminous. Then Beniti said that it was inconvenient, because there was no point in going to the market in such a voluminous dress. She wondered what a pretext was. This was the second stage of the plan. If she appears in this form, rumors about her leadership in the fashion world will immediately disappear. Furthermore, even less will disappear about the golden wave dress. Then, the heroine noticed that the doll was in an unusual place. Someone had put her on the bed. The girl approached and examined her carefully. It seemed as if she was guarding the bed. Soon the heroine and Tasha arrived at the festival grounds. Rumina was already in one of the shops, putting jewels into boxes. Suddenly, someone called her, and the girl turned to see who it was. It turned out to be Beniti. She entered the store and smiled broadly at the girl. Rumina wanted to smile back, but immediately composed herself and assumed an indifferent look, asking why she had come. Then the heroine said that she had received topaz and wanted to thank the girl for it. She was surprised that such a rare gift was sent to her. Then Rumina laughed and said that she had many similar ones at home and that she only gave her one of them. Then she said that Beniti seemed to be interested in such things, since it was she who introduced zircon into fashion. The heroine sighed tiredly, thinking that she had definitely been misunderstood. She had never been interested in precious stones, neither in her previous life nor in this one. Because of Carson, she couldn't afford jewelry. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard in the street. Beniti looked outside and saw that someone had thrown a package on the ground. It turned out to be a sandwich that Lady Rosalie was carefully preparing. The girl simply smiled and said that there was nothing wrong, because they still had many sandwiches. The heroine suddenly shuddered in horror. She remembered a moment from her past life and thought that soon it would be Rosalie's turn. Seeing the girl's strange look, Rumina asked her what was going on. And then the heroine replied that she simply remembered some kind of nightmare. Then Rumina offered to get her a guardian stone so that she would no longer have nightmares. She said that this is a very valuable thing. If you put it at the head of the bed before going to sleep, you can get rid of nightmares. But Beniti said they were worth it. She doesn't have bad dreams every day. Then, Rumina said that she was ready to help her if she suddenly changed her mind. And she also wanted to apologize for the moment when she tried to trip her. They were distracted from their conversation by the shouts of the crowd. All the people greeted the princess and the prince. It turned out that Carson and his sister Selina also came to the festival. Seeing Rumina, Selina immediately ran to her and told her that she had heard that the family business was thriving day by day, and that she also wished her good luck in this. The girl bowed and thanked the princess for such a kind wish. Then, the princess said that she had heard that Miss Beniti had recently done something very good by defending Miss Rumina from false accusations. The heroine said that Her Majesty was exaggerating, that she didn't do anything special. Then, the princess said that she was interested in what they were selling today at the market in her place of trade. She asked the girls to talk about their products. At that moment, the heroine turned her gaze and noticed Carson. He smiled softly at her. She hoped he wouldn't interfere and invited the princess to go to her shop. When Selina entered, she carefully examined all the dresses. She said it was a fantastic ensemble, and Beniti's insight stood out. She also said that she was very impressed with her appearance today, and then asked why she wasn't wearing petticoats. Thinking that everything was going according to plan, Beniti said she was very embarrassed. She thought the petticoat would look bulky if she wore it to the market, so she took it off. She smiled and said that her style is very bold. The heroine looked at the girl in disbelief. She didn't expect such a reaction at all. She said that not everything was so simple. The princess greatly appreciated her action, but Selina said that the girl was truly an innovator in fashion, and there was nothing to be ashamed of. Even she herself wanted to wear this design. The heroine thinks, whether it's fashion or design, she doesn't understand it at all. It's all pure coincidence. The honor and glory should belong to the princess who discovered this accident. Then Beniti said that her completely ordinary outfit, the ideas it brought to the princess, only speak of His Highness's magnificent sense of fashion. She understood that she couldn't fall for the same trick again. Selena's eyes lit up with happiness. She asked if the girl really thought that. Then, the heroine said that she actually had something to tell His Highness. She said that she didn't even know that the gems on the dress were zircons. Then Selena asked her if she really wore this dress unknowingly. The girl answered in the affirmative. Then, the princess said that, be that as it may, she had heard that Beniti played an important role in the popularization of cubic zirconia. In the case of the golden wave dress, her excellent insight still played an important role, and Beniti thought that the princess overestimated such an ordinary person as herself. She claimed that the idea belonged to the princess, not to her. Selena wanted to object, but at that moment Carson intervened in the conversation. He asked the heroine if she claimed that, despite drawing a tree beautifully, this drawing is not a tree. The heroine couldn't understand why he suddenly decided to help her. Then she replied that his patronymic was absolutely correct. Then, Selena quickly turned around and said that she first had to go to the palace because she needed to sketch a new design quickly. She said that she would soon send a carriage to Beniti so they could have a cup of tea together. The heroine wished her a good journey and bowed to her. At that moment, Rosalie entered the shop. She wanted to greet the princess, but she didn't even notice her. Beniti realized that her passion for fashion differs remarkably, and it shows. Then, Carson turned to Rosalie and told her that the weather was good today, but that it was good for her to have come here. Apparently, she had many difficulties with the stubborn duke, but Rosalie replied that she had learned a lot thanks to her father's help. The heroine thought the prince used respectful speech when talking to her. It seems that he respects all girls except Vanity herself. She couldn't understand why he spoke informally only to her. Then Carson turned to Rosalie and told her that her father is a rather solid person and reliable, that the conquest was over, but the number of armed forces was constantly growing. The girl was embarrassed and said that this was her father's work, so she didn't know anything. Regarding this, Beniti watched their conversation in surprise. The prince said that the girls should not bother to answer what they didn't know. It was not his intention to embarrass her. Then he said that the bazaar was already open, so she should go. Then the heroine thought that he always tries to go out into the street. She thought he would be punished after escaping. When Rosalie left the shop, Beniti approached the prince and thanked him. Carson said that he suspected the girl didn't want to take advantage of his popularity. Then, suddenly, there was an awkward silence between them, and after that, the man put his hand on her forehead again. Beniti asked him why he was looking at her so strangely, and then she shouted, saying that he had touched her again without permission, to which the prince asked her to be patient. Beniti said that she didn't understand at all why he was doing this, but she asked him to think about her position. Because she is still competing with others, the prince said it was good that she mentioned it. Then he asked her if she was competing to become his bride. Indeed, in this case, if he spends more time with her, she should be happy, to which the girl replied that it would be unfair. Carson asked her if she really wanted him to care about others. Beniti said that he should care not only about her, but also about Rosalie and Rumina, because they are now choosing his wife, and she thinks that personal feelings should be put aside. If the prince is interested in her, then he should try to forget about it. Carson asked her why she was talking about this. If she was really one of those people who believed that if they did everything right, others would like them. In any case, she should drop her stupid thoughts. The girl was indignant and asked why His Majesty constantly stays by her side. He touches her forehead and also appears exactly where she is going. Carson looked at the girl in bewilderment, not at all expecting such a reaction from her. Beniti said that in this case, she would really have that opinion. Noticing the confusion on his face, she decided to ask him another question. She asked if it was related to the period when she got sick. After all, after her trip to the imperial palace as a child, she became seriously ill with a fever. The girl asked him if he was doing all this because he was afraid of getting sick again, as before, but the prince said that he could not answer that question. He said that, in any case, the girl still wouldn't remember anything. When Beniti asked him if he would mind if she also touched his forehead, the prince said that this was very impolite, but the girl had already reached out to his face. As soon as Beniti touched his forehead with her hand, women entered the shop. saying that they had come to buy something from her. However, when they saw that Beniti was touching the prince's face, they immediately fell silent and began to look fascinated at the couple. The heroine also withdrew her hand and looked at the prince with a feeling of guilt. She hurried to stop the girls and told them that it was not what they thought. She asked Carson to help her, because it was impossible for anyone to misunderstand their relationship. However, the girls decided that it wasn't working, but said that they would carry on with their affairs. Beniti ran out after them and asked them to stop and listen to her. She said that they should come in because they came to shop, but the girls said that this would interfere with the two of them. The heroine said that they would not bother them under any circumstances and asked them to enter the shop. The girl noticed that all the outfits were very beautiful. Then Beniti said that Miss Elvia is incredibly cunning when it comes to fashion. The heroine knew the girl's name because she was known to love gossip. Then Miss Elvia said that, in fact, she and her sister are fans of Beniti, and that if she gives this dress to her sister, she will be happy with it. Then the heroine said that she would give them a big discount on this dress. She also said that she was not close to His Majesty at all. It just happened that way. So she asked the girl to tell others so that there would be no misunderstandings. When the girl gave money for the dress, the prince approached them and asked if Miss Elvia would really only buy this dress. He said that the proceeds of the event would be donated, and since it was such a good cause, why not spend more money? Beniti turned to him and shouted, asking him what nonsense he was talking about. She said that this was an abuse of his authority, but the boy replied that since she was his person, this could not be called an abuse of his authority. When Miss Elvia heard these words, her face turned red. She said that she had to leave, and although Beniti tried to stop her, the girl did not turn around and simply left the shop. The prince also tried to stop her, but the girl didn't even turn around. Soon all the products were sold out. Beniti thanked the prince for his help and asked him if he was busy. The man said that he helped her with the sale, which means he is not busy. The girl thought that he behaved almost like a real merchant. Then she said that since everything was sold out, they should leave. The man asked where they were going. Beniti wondered how she could get rid of him. She said that she wanted to try the street food sold by ordinary people. Then Carson wished her bon appetit. Beniti ran away, thinking that there was no way the prince would eat simple street food as a member of the imperial family. However, she soon realized that the young man was following her and asked him why he was following her, to which Carson replied that there was no reason why he shouldn't. However, it turned out that he didn't want to eat street food. Soon the young people arrived at one of the establishments. Delicious kebabs were sold everywhere. Several vendors continuously invited the young people to try their dishes. Beniti realized that the food was just an excuse, but now looking at it, it seemed so delicious. Suddenly, one of the sellers, a little girl, asked the young couple to buy her own pies. Then the girl suddenly sneezed loudly, which caught Beniti's attention, who felt sorry that such a small child was alone in such cold weather. Now the girl knew that one of the greatest sorrows and difficulties on the road was the cold. When she was on her way, what made her endure the cold was the warm stone given to her by the prince. Then the girl went to the side of the road and picked up a stone from there. Carson said that she makes good use of the skills she learned from him. He said that he would do it all himself, but the girl did not give him her stone. However, he took the stone from her hands and told her that it could cause a fire, so it would be better if he warmed it. When everything was ready, he approached the counter where the girl was working and handed her the warm stone. As soon as the girl took it in her hands, her face immediately lit up with happiness. The stone was really very warm. Then the prince said that she should thank this young lady because she was the one who warmed the stone for her, and he simply gave it to the girl. The girl thanked Miss Beniti, and the heroine was very surprised to meet her. The little vendor said that everyone around knew Miss Beniti, and she also asked him if she could give this stone to her friend. She said that her friend was also very cold. Then the heroine told the girl to keep this stone and that she would make another one for her friend. Then she walked away. The prince immediately ran after her and asked her why she said that. This boy is not the only one who is cold here, and he didn't understand how the girl was going to provide warmth to everyone by herself. Beniti said that she has a way. She asked the prince to wait until she brought more workers. Carson didn't have time to say anything before the girl immediately ran away. Then he put his hand to his forehead, and the next moment the color of his hair and of his eyes changed. Meanwhile, it was already night outside. Beniti was sitting by the fire when suddenly she heard a sound behind her. The girl turned around and thanked the stranger for her help. It turned out to be Rosalie. She said that everything was fine. Beniti said that the girl was surprisingly strong. Then, Rosalie said that she took up fencing on her father's advice. The girl was surprised, as she knew nothing about Rosalie's family. She didn't know what plans they had for their only daughter, since they forced her to practice fencing. Apparently, something strange was happening there. The heroine continued to work on the fire in silence while Rosalie watched her. At that moment, Rumina approached them. She told them that all this work is very hard, and that she wouldn't have done it if it weren't for Beniti's request. And His Highness, Rosalie was amazed by the way Rumina appeared, because she is a lady. At that moment, Beniti heard some strange sounds next to her, and immediately turned to see what was happening. It turned out that a whole crowd of people approached them with cupcakes and candles in their hands. Everyone approached Miss Beniti with big smiles on their faces. The girls, including the heroine herself, didn't understand at all what was happening. Then the little vendor approached her. She said that they knew it was the girl's birthday after midnight. Beniti sighed. It was true. Tomorrow is her birthday. However, on this occasion, she didn't think about having a party. This year, she wanted to celebrate her birthday modestly. At that moment, Carson approached them. He said that it seems everyone in the Empire knows about her birthday. Then, the heroine replied whether a man could use flight magic. She knew that magic weakens closer to the ground, and flying to the skies is a more practical way. Carson asked if she really wanted to avoid this situation. After all, if she becomes the crown prince's consort, she will receive many more wishes from even more people. Before Beniti had time to object to him, suddenly all the people around them shouted, congratulating the girl on her birthday. In the morning, the heroine was completely exhausted. Suddenly, someone approached her and handed her a bottle of water. It was Tasha. She guessed that the girl had a dry throat from expressing gratitude to the people, so she brought her some water. The heroine thanked the maid and drank the water, and then Tasha asked her if she knew how she felt now. The maid said that she felt as if she were serving Her Majesty, the Empress. Then, the heroine immediately jumped up and covered her mouth with her hands. She said that you can't say that. Then she asked how everyone knew about her birthday. The maid replied that some young man had told everyone. He was the blonde boy with blue eyes who handed out candles and cupcakes, and if you think about it, he looked a lot like Mr. Carson. Beniti immediately cursed in anger. She should have known that Carson was behind all of this. Then Tasha asked her if the girl was hungry, because free pancakes were being given out nearby. When the heroine turned in the direction the maid was pointing, she saw a young man with blue eyes and blonde hair standing at one of the counters. It was Carson. Her face was distorted with horror. She couldn't believe it was really him. Then she told the maid that she wouldn't, and that she should eat alone. She wondered how Carson knew exactly about her birthday, and why he would do such a thing for her. Suddenly, she saw another blonde man approach the counter and say something to the boy. After a while, she recognized this man. He was an alchemist named Akaran Phanos. Then the heroine ran towards him and asked him if it was really the same Akaran. The boy didn't even stop chewing his bun and smiled sweetly at the girl. Greeting her, Beniti had heard that he didn't follow formalities. Then she said that this was their first meeting. However, the boy asked to skip these formalities because they were the same age. Then he gestured with his hand towards the food counter and asked Carson to make them another pancake. The man said that it was already the third. Then Akaran said that this was not for him, but for his friend. Akaran Reynos is the youngest son of Archduke Delman Reynos, the elder brother of the current emperor. He could have inherited the title of duke. However, he dared to give up his title to follow the path of alchemy. Then Beniti turned to the young man. She asked him if he was good at alchemy. Akaran replied that he knew this well because he was an alchemist. Then the heroine said that she had some questions about alchemy. She asked him if he knew anything about sleeping pills that make you fall asleep immediately after taking them. The man was very surprised by this question. He said that such dangerous substances are not produced. The heroine thought that on that night, the night of Carson's death, she didn't remember how she fell asleep. It was clearly a sleeping pill, but apparently Akaran doesn't know about it. The man asked her if she had seen such a substance. The girl decided to avoid answering and said that she simply read about this in a novel where an alchemist created such a substance. The man was extremely surprised. He didn't even know who could do such a thing. Then he asked the girl if that hero was negative, to which Beniti replied in the affirmative. She thought that to fight such a negative hero, she should have a decent strategy prepared. Then she said that she was also interested in alchemy and asked Akaran where he studied. The young man said that if the girl wanted, he could explain something to her if she had any doubts. At that moment, someone approached them from behind. It turned out to be Carson. He asked her if they were friends. Karen said that they had just met, but that they were going to become close friends. But the heroine replied that she hadn't planned anything of the sort. Carson told her that it was a wise decision, because if she got close to him, she would have to spend a lot of nerves, so she should be careful. He said that the young man finds himself in different situations, and the girl herself will understand it when she goes with him in one of these situations. The heroine thought that she understood what the young man was talking about, without even experiencing it herself. Then, Carson asked if he should give the money he earned for a donation. He took a bag of coins from his pocket and said that so far he had managed to earn a lot of money. Although he was the one who made efforts to get the money, he wanted to give all the glory and honors to Beniti. She asked why there was so much money here. Then the director replied that a large amount for donations was a good idea. He said that everyone was eager to buy these pancakes, and all thanks to the girl's fame. After all, it is good that the money of aristocrats, who only know luxury, is now used for a good cause. It turned out that this was the first time in the history of the charity bazaar. Tasha said that no one had ever bought clothes that were more expensive than the original price. Unless, of course, it was clothes from the imperial family, but Beniti said there was no need to tell her. The girl was perplexed, because everyone was very happy that the heroine received an award at this charity bazaar. However, since the heroine pretended to be very sick to miss the awards ceremony, she kept telling the maid that, although it wasn't obvious to her, she was very sick, and therefore, now she had no time for that. However, she asked the girl not to worry, because she was not dying. However, she was worried that her approval rating might drop, because no one would want to serve a weak queen and sickly. Then Beniti thought that this was an opportunity for her. She told the maid that she felt so bad that she felt like she was going to die, and asked her to tell everyone how sick she was. Tasha was surprised, because the girl had just said that she felt fine. Then the heroine said that she suddenly felt unwell. The maid suddenly jumped up from her seat and said that she would call the doctor, but Beniti said that she didn't need to call anyone. The maid looked at her mistress in bewilderment. To call a doctor? However, she understood that Tasha didn't understand her, and that she was faking this illness. Then an idea occurred to her, and she asked Tasha to contact a Karen. The girl said that she should simply drink the cold medicine that the young man would bring her. When the maid left the room, the girl sighed tiredly. Portraying the image of a lavish and extravagant girl was quite difficult, and she needed to take advantage of a Karen's popularity. She decided that she needed to reduce the level of interest in her with the help of her sickly appearance. The girl began to imagine in her thoughts how she would behave in public and tell everyone how sick she was. When suddenly in her thoughts, someone took her hand. It turned out to be Carson. He approached her and hugged her tenderly. The heroine shook her head sharply, not understanding where the prince came from in her thoughts. She didn't understand why he continued to pursue her in this life. All her plans collapsed because of him. Then she suddenly heard some strange sounds outside the window and immediately turned to it and asked who it was. A moment later, her window opened, and she saw a huge Pegasus with a man sitting on it. He was a blonde young man. He asked the animal to calm down. A moment later, he fell on a Pegasus directly into Beniti's room. It turned out to be a Karen, but the girl was perplexed as to why he entered through the window. The man asked if everything was all right with the girl, because he was told that she was dying, and that today she would literally leave this world. He sharply grabbed the girl by the cheeks, and then she asked him to calm down, saying that she was not dying at all. A Karen said that her maid said she was extremely sick. Then he took a bottle of green liquid from his bag and asked her to drink it, saying that it was a medicine he had developed, and that it would help her a lot. However, the girl refused, saying that she had already taken the medicine. However, the man insisted. He said that he couldn't stand to see someone get sick. Beniti looked at him in bewilderment, not understanding why he was insisting so much. In the end, she agreed to take the medicine, but soon regretted it because she felt very ill, and her vomiting did not stop. A Karen only scratched the back of his head and said that this medicine always has this effect. The girl had no strength for anything. She felt very ill. Then, the man said that she had no energy due to the side effects of vomiting, but that she would definitely get better and the illness would disappear. The heroine suggested that it was poison, at which the young man merely laughed. Then, Beniti asked him if he was so sure it was just medicine. Why didn't he try it himself? The man replied that he was not the subject of the study, but the researcher himself. So he would refuse. Then, the girl asked him if he had really tested this substance on her. Karen said that this test of this substance is carried out with individual subjects. And besides, the tests are already completed, so the girl has nothing to worry about. The heroine smiled nervously. It turns out that this medicine was given to someone else. Then, she asked him why he started doing alchemy. If everything was really to create such poison. The man laughed and said that the girl had a very good imagination. He said that there are people in the world who need alchemy. His friend is very sick. He suffers unimaginable pain every day. Akaran began to study alchemy thanks to this friend. He needs medication to cope with such intense pain. Then, the heroine began to think. It turns out that the young man refused the inheritance and dedicated himself completely to alchemy thanks to his friend. However, she said that, be that as it may, she would no longer take this medicine, to which the boy replied that he would only give it to her if she was already dying. Then, Beniti suddenly became thoughtful. If you think about it this way, this medicine can be used in her plan about the sickly princess. Then she asked the young man to give her more of this medicine. She said that she had an idea of where she could use it. After a brief silence, the boy agreed and said that the donation fairy would not abuse this, and that he sincerely believed in it. Karen gave the bottle to the girl, but in return he asked her to fulfill his request. He wanted her to help him create a cure for his friend. He said that his friend's character was very grumpy, but with the girl's help, it would be much easier for him. The heroine asked what that had to do with his character. Then Karen replied that if she said that she was the one who prepared the medicine, he would gladly accept it. Beniti assumed it was about her popularity and then agreed to help. Then the boy took another bottle of medicine from his bag. He said it was a gift, that a girl could use it when she needed to get out of a crowd of people. The young man said that he always carries something like this with him and that it is very useful. He explained that this solution makes the person invisible. However, it only lasts for 30 minutes. The girl looked at the bottle in disbelief and asked if this product had any side effects. Karen laughed and said that he had received shares. A stone is as strong as that medicine. However, the girl learns about the action itself only after using the product. Then he handed her a small book. He said that before learning alchemy, a girl must first learn about herbs, and this book describes them well. Then the young man said that it was time to leave, and Beniti said goodbye to him. Before she had time to thank him for the gift, the young man had already mounted his Pegasus and flew high into the sky. Some time has passed since that day, and New Year has arrived in Reinos. The dress her mother prepared for Beniti was exactly the same as in her previous life. She would be the perfect sickly candidate for today's New Year's party. When everything was ready, Tasha began to style the girl's hair. However, the heroine asked her not to bother and simply let her hair down. But the maid said that this was impossible because members of the imperial family would see her, so she should look more elegant than other ladies. The heroine thought that this was not good because she would stand out in the eyes of the imperial family. When the girl looked in the mirror, she saw the beautiful hairstyle that Tasha had given her. However, she understood that in any case she would vomit at the reception, after which she would leave this place. At that moment, the heroine's mother entered the room. She said that now her daughter had grown up and was already starting to look like a real woman. She said that she had good news because Beniti clearly liked being with the imperial family. She reported that the imperial family had sent her a carriage. The heroine knew what this meant. The imperial carriage was a carriage pulled by flying horses. However, she didn't understand why they treated her like a beggar. Then, the heroine's mother said that the imperial family must have noticed something in Beniti. The order to send her a carriage was given by His Highness, the Crown Prince himself. It turned out that the carriage with Pegasus was actually near the palace entrance. The heroine thought that Carson also told everyone about her birthday. But why did he treat her like this? Soon the girl got into the carriage and said goodbye to her mother and her maid. Once inside, she closed the door tightly behind her. Beniti sighed tiredly and didn't even notice that Carson himself was sitting next to her. Then the man decided to speak and said that he had heard that the girl was sick. Out of fear, the heroine grabbed the door handle, but the prince quickly took her hand and said that outside there was only sky, and that if she opened the door, she would die falling from a height. If she didn't want to end her life like that, she should have stayed still. Then, Beniti asked him why he had come for her. Carson replied that he wanted to check something, and then put his palm on her forehead again. He thought that she got sick because of him, but it seems that was not the case. Then, the heroine said that she also needed to check something. She asked if the prince really told the townspeople about her birthday, and also distributed buns and candles. She wondered why he did this. The prince awkwardly scratched his head, asking if this was an interrogation. Then he replied that he did it, because he regretted ruining her birthday one day. The heroine wondered if he really ever ruined her birthday. She said that the young man kept constantly touching her forehead, and the reason was related to him, because then she fell ill with a fever. Before the prince could answer, Beniti announced the date, December 12th. She said that was the day she turned 8 years old. That's when she had a fever, and for some reason, he was by her side at that moment. At first, she knew nothing, but now she understood everything about why Countess Alika asked her that question. Hearing this, the prince was very surprised. He explained that Countess Alika asked him if he remembered what happened on her 8th birthday. Carson yelled in rage and said that a gag order had been issued on the matter. Apparently, Countess Alika asked a forbidden question. Beniti looked at the young man, confused about what happened then, as even a gag order was placed on it. Could it be that Carson had hurt her? Then the boy suddenly smiled and said that the girl's wit works quite well, and he was even glad that she found out everything. He turned and silently looked out the window, and Beniti wondered how Carson seemed so sad whenever he talked about it. Soon the carriage arrived at the imperial palace. The prince said goodbye to the girl and told her that they would see each other later. Beniti thought to herself that they wouldn't see each other, and she would be carried out on a stretcher first. Then, the girl entered the palace and began to walk through the imperial halls. Suddenly, she heard some voices. They belonged to girls. Apparently, Rosalie was talking to someone. One of the girls asked her to stop trying to reconcile her with Miss Beniti. It seemed to be Diletta, who said that everything was a misunderstanding. It turned out that the girl was not happy, that Miss Beniti had specially set up an umbrella for her that day, as if she was taking care of her. The heroine remembered that day. It happened during the selection process, when the girls had to be given some kind of tea. In the end, it all ended with Diletta being singled out, while other candidates who didn't have umbrellas were, on the contrary, praised. And now the girl didn't understand why Rosalie called all of this an accident. At that moment, Rumina intervened in the conversation. She asked why Diletta was blaming Beniti for being judged. She said that everyone was caught in the rain, but she competed and never helped anyone. And Beniti simply didn't think about the consequences. The heroine, seeing all this, silently praised Rumina for her quick wit. However, she suddenly thought that she was grateful for her protection, but this was a good opportunity for her. Soon Diletta will say that other princesses also suffered because of Beniti, which will make the aristocrats begin to despise her. Then Rosalie said that Rumina is not the main one here. However, the girl asked her not to interrupt her. And then Beniti herself intervened in the conversation. She said that Rumina doesn't need to protect her so much. The girl said that Diletta was right. Diletta looked at Beniti in disbelief. Then the heroine said that, when it was going to rain, she advised her to open her umbrella because she knew that she wasn't actually going to open it. She was just using her psychology, and it was a good decision on her part, as they are rivals. Then she said that if she was so unreliable, she could gossip about her all she wanted, and say that Beniti was deceiving her. The heroine smiled, realizing that her plan was going quite well. Suddenly, Diletta smiled and said that she had misunderstood Beniti anyway. The heroine was dumbfounded by this reaction. Diletta said that she initially thought Beniti was hypocritical, but it turned out she wasn't. If she were really faking it, even a little, she wouldn't admit what she did. However, the fact is that Diletta was foolish to believe the words of other competitors. Suddenly, Rumina joined the conversation. She said that she was once again convinced that Beniti was very sincere. Diletta said that Beniti is a person of the purest soul, and it even seems that she is starting to like the lady. Rosalie simply watched everything that was happening in silence. Soon the banquet began. Different girls began to approach the heroine and apologize. They said that they were wrong about her, but Beniti said that this was already a thing of the past. And although she tried not to lose her composure, panic erupted inside her because she did not expect such a reaction at all. At that moment, a Karen approached her and told her that he would like to steal the girl away for a while. He realized that she needed help and accompanied her to the dining room, where the girl thanked him for his help. However, she said that the boy normally doesn't leave the house, so she wondered why he was there. Then she thought that if a Karen was here, he would ruin her whole plan. Then suddenly, the young man asked her if her pills had spoiled. The heroine grabbed his sleeve, and her face darkened. She said that a Karen shouldn't be here at all. The young man said that he was just worried about her. Then the girl screamed and asked the young man to help her one last time. However, Carson overheard their conversation, who appeared right behind Beniti. The heroine took the bottle given to her by the alchemist, realizing that she had been caught, but she couldn't do anything about it. Then she drank the contents of the bottle. The next moment, Carson took her hand and a Karen stopped her. Beniti screamed and asked what they were doing to her. Carson said he was right, and a Karen confirmed his words. Then, the alchemist said that he had come because the girl was nervous. Carson came here for the same reason, and the girl herself came here to drink this bottle and cause nausea. Then, Beniti said that all that was not true, because there was no need for her to drink this rubbish. Carson said that others didn't know anything about it, but that she shouldn't try to deceive him. He decided to speak from his own experience because he once tasted the contents of this bottle, and the person loses the desire to even look at it. However, the girl brought another bottle here, although she does not have a terminal illness, which means it was her hidden plan. Beniti realized that a Karen told the prince everything that very day. Then, the prince said that if the girl didn't want to become his wife, she should leave the selection according to the rules. And if she didn't do this, he promised to personally appeal to His Majesty to ask him to make her the crown princess. Beniti and a Karen looked at the prince in horror. After all, he had literally proposed to her. The prince said that this was not a proposal, but the alchemist noted that he still hadn't let go of the girl's hand. Carson withdrew his hand and said that it was just his imagination. He said that in this situation, it is not about a proposal, but only advice. Then, Beniti got up from the table and said that people were looking at them, so she should go elsewhere. The prince followed her. He asked her if she really hadn't even organized a banquet for her birthday, to which the girl replied that there was nothing of the sort. She said that she felt unwell and was being treated at home, but the prince doubted that was really the case. Then, Beniti chuckled and asked what would happen if it turned out that she was lying. Carson replied that if they held a small banquet, there would be those who would praise her for such modesty. At a lavish banquet, on the other hand, people rejoiced and said that the Reishi family was still in good health. Then he asked if it really wasn't difficult for the girl, to which the heroine simply smiled and looked away. The prince looked at her inquisitively, expecting an honest answer. Then he said that in a few months there would be a tour of the country, and most likely the girls knew that that was the decisive moment to choose the crown princess. He added that he would be watching, so the girls should give their best. Otherwise, he will propose to her for real. Hearing a growl of disapproval from behind, Carson turned and said that it would be better if a Karen kept quiet. The alchemist said that now is not the time, because the speech will begin soon, and they must leave at this moment. The next moment, one of the palace guards announced that Her Majesty, the Empress, would come here. It turned out that the woman came down the stairs and greeted everyone present. Then the prince, along with his guests, decided that they should leave immediately, which they did. The girl asked him why they left, to which Carson replied that he had to. He said that in his absence, the girl might behave strangely. Beniti was indignant at this answer and said that she couldn't do it even if she wanted to. Soon night fell, and the three arrived at the main gate. However, Carson said that the girl was not allowed to enter. The heroine didn't understand why she wasn't allowed in, but the alchemist said that he had reasons. He said that now the girl cannot leave here. The fact is that a crowd of people has gathered in front of the gate who want to look at her. It was true. There was a huge crowd of people in front of the palace, shouting Beniti's name, and eager to see her. Soon a Pegasus arrived at the gate, and a Karen saddled it. He said goodbye to his acquaintances and promised the girl that they would see each other soon. When he took off, the prince informed the heroine that they would fly too. The girl was indignant because she expected them to leave here in a carriage. Carson said that she shouldn't worry. If she held on tight to him, she definitely wouldn't fall. In fact, Beniti was more concerned about holding him back. However, she had no other choice, so she sat on the Pegasus and tightly gripped the prince's cloak. Soon the young man said that they would leave. The next moment, the Pegasus soared into the air and flew away from the castle. Beniti screamed in fear, but the prince asked her to hold steady and not panic. They flew all afternoon, and at dusk arrived at the designated place. Carson asked the girl how long she planned to hug him. The heroine immediately pulled her hands away from him and realized that she really hugged him longer than expected. However, the man took her hand and told her not to stray so far. The fact is that Furion is the name the prince gave to the Pegasus. It turned out that the Pegasus they were flying on was named that. The girl knew that was the name of the Pegasus that served the great emperor of Alendra. And everyone knew its constellation. Did she really give the name of that beautiful horse to Prince Carson? Then Beniti said that this name suited him very well. She added that if Firion really existed, this is how he would look. In response to this, the prince only smiled. He said that the child who came up with the name said the same thing the girl is saying now. Then the heroine asked if she herself was this child. The prince chuckled, surprised that she remembered, but Beniti said she had simply imagined it from the expression on his face. Then the prince said that he was very grateful for this name, and then clarified that it was not he who was grateful, but Firion. Shortly after, he mounted the Pegasus and flew away, leaving the girl alone. In a few months, the crown princess candidates will visit the empire's troubled regions and will demonstrate their abilities. In her previous life in Natasen, a gambling city, Beniti caught illegal gamblers and loan sharks, Rosalie, who went to Litos, where the plague had spread, and Rumina, who went to Kara, the city of minerals, returned without achieving any results. However, the heroine decided that this time everything would be different, and she already had a plan prepared. So she decided to go visit Rosalie. The girl was happy to see her. She said that she had been waiting for her for a long time. In the hospital, she also smiled and said that she was very happy to see her. Then she asked the maid to bring her freshly squeezed melon juice. The maid exchanged glances with her mistress. Rosalie didn't know what to do. However, seeing her mistress's gloomy look, she just bowed and said that she would do everything now. Rosalie said that it's not easy to get melon at this time of year. However, she understood that the memory wanted to tell her something important and was not meant for prying ears. The heroine sat on the couch and said that this time she would go to Litos. She asked Rosalie to go to Nadasen. Rosalie was surprised by this proposal because there was a plague in Litos, but the heroine said that she had been there recently. She said that it wasn't that bad there, so she would go there again, and instead she would give Rosalie information about Natasen. She said that Natasen is a gambling city, that many illegal transactions take place there, and that the city's mayor is doing nothing to stop them. The mayor is involved in this because he gets a lot of money from it. This is the price that Baron Duran pays for turning a blind eye to this chaos. In a past life, even when Beniti, as a crown princess candidate, visited this place, she was gambling illegally. This obtained information will help Rosalie strengthen trust between them and help Beniti learn more about her. This was precisely the heroine's goal. Then Rosalie asked her to honestly tell her the real reason for her trip to Litos. She asked if the girl was sure that she was the cause of the plague. Beniti replied that she would try to help the people. Rosalie doubted that those were all the reasons, but the heroine said that this was also a very important matter. She asked Rosalie to inform Her Majesty, the Empress, that the girl would go to Natasen. Then the heroine would help in any way she could. Rosalie said that she would think positively. Beniti smiled, thinking that someday she would definitely wipe the smile off her face. A week later, the three candidates for the prince's bride met in the imperial palace chambers. Beniti prepared melon juice for the girls. While Rosalie and Rumina enjoyed their drink, a plan was forming in the heroine's head. Then suddenly, she took the glass and spilled it on her dress. Rosalie immediately ran to help with something, not to clean the dress, but the girls stopped her, telling her that she needed it. At that moment, Her Majesty the Empress entered the hall. She said that a week had already passed, and all the girls were in perfect health. Then, she suddenly noticed a stain on Beniti's dress. The heroine smiled. Her plan was going well. Because of this stain, Her Majesty would think that she had no manners and would definitely expel her. Then, the Empress turned to Alika and asked her to take care of Miss Beniti's outfit. The woman immediately ran to her with a cloth, intending to clean the girl's dress. The heroine became sad. In her head, everything should have been completely different. When everything was ready, the Empress asked the girls which areas they would go to. Rumina said that she was going to Kara. The Empress said that this was an excellent choice, and then asked the other girls what their plans were. Beniti and Rosalie quickly looked at each other. Rosalie then said that she would go to Natasen. The Empress said that she had chosen a city that was large enough. Then the heroine said that she would go to Litos. Then the Empress asked her if she knew that there was a plague outside Litos. The heroine said that was why her visit as a candidate for the position of crown princess would be a great comfort to the restless citizens. Then the Empress said that if it was about her reputation, then perhaps it would be so. Then she got up from her seat, smiled, and asked them to let her know if they changed their minds. Then she asked all the women to leave them alone with Miss Beniti. When they were alone, the Empress said that Beniti was doing many good deeds. Besides, according to Alika, she is not afraid to express her opinion. Then, the Empress invited her to speak frankly. She asked if Baron is Reishi Beniti's older brother. The thing is, the woman asked Duke Philip about marrying his daughter Selina. However, the Duke replied that joining the royal family is loyalty, but a double marriage could be a betrayal. The heroine realized that her father had said that she should become the crown princess. The Empress said that everything was due to honesty, and she was very grateful that the girl realized it. Then she said that she would pay more attention to this in the future. She hoped that the girl could really become her daughter-in-law. Some time later, the heroine went for a walk around the city. Her head was throbbing because of Her Majesty's words that she would become her daughter-in-law. Today she came to learn alchemy. So that was all she had to think about. Besides, there were still 3 months left before leaving for Lido's. Beniti wondered why she somehow avoided training with a Karen. At the door of his house, it was written that alchemy is magic. And this phrase inspired more confidence in the girl than the alchemist himself. When she opened the door, she immediately smiled widely and greeted him. A Karen was in the middle of the room with a mountain of books in his hands. The girl immediately entered, thinking to herself that he was missing. In the past, there was someone who saved her every time she was in danger. However, he never showed himself. But when she woke up after fainting in a dark tent, all her problems were solved, and she believed it was a guard. From the palace, after a while, the girl began to practice alchemy. However, apparently, not everything went as well as she would have liked. Today, she was not happy that her potion exploded once again, and a Karen simply laughed at her. He said that to learn alchemy, one needs patience. The heroine thought that she would like to change mentors. Then, the young man said that now it may seem like a failure, but in reality, it is a challenge. He said that the girl should move forward step by step and not stop. Beniti wondered if it could be that in a past life, a Karen was an alchemist genius who invented elixirs for eavesdropping. Then she asked him to tell her more about this elixir, but the young man didn't understand what she was talking about. Then the girl said, because he himself said that alchemy is magic. The boy replied that this was just his dream, but that this phrase had no deep meaning. Then he suggested that they talk about a sleeping pill that acts immediately after eating. The guy said that, if you make a mistake in the composition of a sleeping pill, after which you lose consciousness in a matter of seconds, a person can even die. He handed a book to the girl and told her that if she didn't aim to kill someone, then they would not create such a medicine because it was too dangerous. Beniti asked who could achieve it. She wondered who was really capable of concocting such an elixir. A Karen replied that it was created only with bad intentions. Much time has passed since that day, and one spring day, shortly before a trip to the regions, Rosalie went to her. She asked the girl to tell her everything about Nadasen. The heroine smiled. She knew that in a past life, in one of Nadasen's bakeries, she had the opportunity to interrogate a teenager who was about to commit a crime. It was at that moment that she learned quite a bit of information. Illegal gambling takes place in the dungeon and reservoir, and requires a password to enter. Then Rosalie asked what password was needed. Beniti replied that it was not a literal password. Memories of a past life flashed before her eyes as the boy took something out of his jacket. It was a loaf of bread. Then the heroine said that there will be Billy's bread, which is sold at Billy's bakery. You must take it with you, and then the girl will be able to enter where they are not allowed. At the same time, she must bring 2 of the strongest soldiers with her. The girl remembered that in her past life, 2 people accompanying her were not enough for her. However, an imperial guard appeared in the dark shop, and thanks to him she was able to survive. Rosalie will also be able to meet him, and then everything will work out for her. Soon the heroine met with Rumina, and told her that there was underground water in the city of Kara. The girl was surprised, not understanding why Beniti was telling her this. The heroine said that she was doing this in gratitude for the fact that Rumina sided with her at that time. Then the girl said that if everything went well, she would pay Beniti back. The heroine smiled slyly. She told them everything they needed to know, and now, she just had to wait until they succeeded. On the day of departure, the heroine Tasha was very upset. She did not want to say goodbye to her mistress at all. Brother Beniti noticed that his sister seemed quite calm, so the maids had nothing to worry about. However, Tasha still asked the girl to be very careful. When Beniti got into the carriage, she found that Carson was already sitting in it. He chuckled and said that she didn't shed a single tear. The heroine asked why the young man was there, to which the prince replied that he had come to accompany her to Lido's. The girl noted that this did not happen in a past life. Then the boy asked her why she had chosen Lido's. He suggested that this place brought back memories associated with him for a girl. She replied that she was going there solely because of the plague. The thing is, she just wants to help people. The prince said that she would not gain any benefit in this selection. He meant that she somehow had to eradicate the disease. Beniti did not answer. She just smiled sweetly. Soon they arrived at the Lito's mansion, where they were greeted by a man who said it was an honor for his empire to welcome the young people here as well. He said that he had collected the necessary data about the disease, and the girl thanked him for his prompt work. He said that the territory of the monastery, where the plague spread, has been isolated, and the causes of the epidemic have not yet been established. The heroine carefully looked at the paper, and suddenly something caught her attention. She realized that this had not happened in her previous life. Then she told the prince that they should immediately go to the monastery. She said that the documents indicated that Reika and Janie had contracted the plague. The man shouted, saying that they should never do this. The symptoms of the infection are still unknown, and they are about to reach the very epicenter of the disease. Then, the heroine asked the prince if he remembered meeting the twins. It turned out that an epidemic had just broken out in that area. They spent half a day with children who had lost their parents to the disease, but they did not get infected, which means that the disease is transmitted from person to person. Then the director asked if that was the only reason. The girl said that there was other evidence. In places with poor sanitary conditions, the infection process occurs more slowly, and it's hard to get sick there. The report has all the information, and now they have to go there and check everything themselves. Carson said that her words made sense, but that she was too hasty, and he could not agree with her idea. Despite all the girl's pleas, he said that it was no longer up for discussion. The heroine thought it was incredibly stupid, because his future knights could die. After a while, the girl left the hall, left completely alone. She realized that she urgently needed to visit the twins. She opened her suitcase and took out a scarf, putting it on to conceal her identity, because if the twins died here, she could be held responsible for changing the course of history. She knew she had to be very careful, and Carson was in the next room. Beniti carefully opened the door and looked out, checking if anyone was there. It turned out that the prince was right outside the door and asked where the girl was going and why she was dressed like that. The girl didn't know what to answer, and then the young man invited her to go together. He said that if something happened to them during their official outing, the city government would receive punishment, so they had to leave quietly. He said that now they would head to the monastery. Carson said that was why he came here, to sneak out with the girl. Beniti said that she could get infected, but the prince said that he would not die from it. However, he could not believe if the girl really cared so much about those twins as to be ready to go to such a dangerous place. The heroine thought, indeed, why are they getting infected? This is not entirely her judgment. In a past life, only one fact about the plague was discovered, and that was that it was not transmitted from person to person. This report was provided by Carson himself, and therefore, she believed him. So she said that she would go there because she was sure of her safety. Soon they arrived at the correct place. The prince asked the girl to wait outside, but she said that everything was fine, and that she would simply follow him. Carson sighed wearily and asked her what she would do if she contracted an infection. The girl said that she would be very careful. The young man replied that if she got infected, he would not leave her. Soon they arrived at a dark passage, behind which only darkness was visible. But the young man realized that there was someone inside. When they entered, they saw what looked like a prayer room with people in dark areas. Some of them warmed themselves near the fire, and others hugged to keep warm. The prince assumed that someone would have brought them firewood. Suddenly, a woman ran towards them. She recognized the young people as representatives of noble families and asked if they had come here to help them. Then the prince asked her to tell him how they were doing. Soon he realized that the woman was not from here. She said that she spent the night here as usual, that they brought her dried meat for dinner, and that, after eating it, she fell ill. Carson noticed that no one told him about the meat. Then the woman continued. She said that government employees do not want to hear anything about it. They are afraid of getting infected and immediately flee. Then she pointed her finger to the corner of the room, saying that Jatin had come. He knew better than anyone about the disease. Beniti and Carson looked back and saw a short man behind them, holding a pile of firewood. Carson addressed him, but the man immediately yelled at them and ordered them to leave quickly. He said that if they stayed here, and the disease spread to their precious bodies, the monastery would have to be burned, and then the innocent people who remained here would have no roof over their heads. He was not interested in the useless sympathy of the careless youth. Then Carson used magic, and the heroine realized that something was about to happen. The prince pointed his palm at the man and said that he was talking too much. The next moment, his hand was wrapped around a black snake. A moment later, all his limbs were wrapped in snakes, and he himself flew through the air, screaming and begging the young man to remove the snakes. The prince said that he would release him when he was willing to cooperate with them. He just needed the man to answer his questions honestly. Jatin agreed to cooperate, and then Carson let him down. He asked the man to tell him the causes of the plague. The man said that it started by eating meat from dead, sick pigs. Everyone who ate it died. After that, even those who ate healthy pork fell ill. The prince wondered why people continued to eat meat, even after this. But Jatin said that an aristocrat would not understand this. He would never know how difficult it was for the poor. He said that, anyway, the remaining pigs were buried in the ground. The city still thinks that this is a contagious infection. Then the heroine said that they were told that someone got sick after eating dried meat. Jatin said that some people were given the treat at the farm, and it was done before the pigs got sick. Then Beniti asked him where that farmer was now. The man said that he committed suicide out of guilt. The prince said that about 100 deaths had been counted, but he was interested in knowing how things were at that moment. Jatin said that more than 150 people died. 50 people died after going to the city government 10 days ago. The girl was in shock. Obviously, something was wrong here. Only 35 people died in a past life. Only 10 days had passed since Reika and Janie got infected. Then the girl shouted, saying that they were looking for Hamel's brother and sister, and asked if the man knew where they were. As it turned out, both twins were in the hospital room. They were unconscious, and then the heroine said that they couldn't leave them here. Carson agreed with her and promised to call the monks who would cure them. Then the heroine said that they couldn't do this either, realizing that even in a past life, the monks could not eradicate the disease. They needed to discover the origin of the plague to find an antidote. She asked the prince to find the man who sold the pigs to the monastery. Beniti said that the man's name was Cador. Carson asked her how she came up with such a plan, but the girl said there was no time to talk now, that she urgently needed to find this person. Then the prince said that he was now referring to a search party. Then he said that the girl would go with them. Beniti said that she was unusual at horseback riding, so it was better for her to stay here. Carson said that in this case, she should not leave the mansion. However, the girl did not listen to him and soon found herself on the street, watching what the prince was going to do. There were also guards with her. She ordered them to await further orders when they found the necessary person. Soon they arrived at the right place. It was Cador's hideout. The heroine thought about it. She recently realized that the hideout was located in the western part of Lidos, in a logging area, but it would seem strange if she pretended to know this place. Therefore, she went to the man who greeted her upon arrival and asked him to assign her a search team. The man said he could not do this under any circumstances. He was very worried when she went to the monastery without saying anything. Moreover, the prince also told her to stay inside. Then the girl asked why she didn't know that His Highness was so worried about her. But if she now stood idly by, the citizens' worries would only increase. So she definitely needed to go there. At this moment, not only her safety is important, and the man should have understood that. The man had no choice but to agree with the girl and assign her a search party. When Beniti and her squad arrived at the desired location, she asked them to wait a bit because she heard voices coming from the building. The men were talking about some kind of rain grass and that they needed to destroy it. Beniti didn't understand what kind of rain grass they were talking about. She suddenly remembered that she had read about this in the book that Karen had given her. One of the men said that they shouldn't worry, that no one would catch them, because the city government didn't even know about it. Then the girl understood everything. It turns out that it wasn't a plague, but a poison. It is a poisonous herb that sprouts when it rains, and the reaction produced when consumed is very similar to the symptoms of the plague. Then she realized that everything was planned. A man who was inside the building said that this herb had an unpleasant smell, and that, if it was burned, he would transport it to Kuburan and burn it there. Another man asked him not to give them any more care, but that man said he would still do just that. Then the man said that if it was enough to trust Miss Beniti, she would fall. The heroine couldn't believe what she heard. Was it really about her? Suddenly, a fight broke out among the men. One of them said that, when Miss Beniti arrived, the number of deaths was supposed to increase, which is exactly what they agreed on. However, another man said that it was supposed to increase, but no one talked about murder. Then Beniti ordered her squad to march. The men immediately rushed out of the bushes and held swords to the criminals' necks. The girl ordered them not to miss any of the men. Behind her, she heard one of the criminals grunt in pain. When she ran to him, she saw that he was wounded and had blood all over his clothes. She also began to ask him who was behind all this, who forced him to do this. However, the man did not have time to answer anything, as life left him. Beniti didn't understand who could be the person who would do such a thing just for her. Could it be that Rosalie's father was behind this? But Duke Ramon simply wanted to eliminate her as crown princess. Is that really why he did this? The girl was distracted from her thoughts by a voice behind her. A man with a dark mask approached her and told her that with her death everything would finally end. The girl immediately shouted, asking who he was and who had sent him. The man did not answer. He tried with all his might to throw the rope around her neck. Then the girl felt an incredible danger, because at that rate she would lose consciousness. Suddenly, she saw a magical glow in front of her. Then she realized that the guard with magic, the dark veil, had reached her in this life. When the girl woke up, she was lying in bed. She soon realized that she was in a mansion for honored guests. At that moment, a servant entered the room. In his hands was a tray with a teapot and a cup. He told the girl not to think about running away anywhere else, but Beniti was worried about whether they had caught the man who killed Cador. The young man, instead of answering, handed her a cup of tea and told her that it was very hot, so she should drink carefully. When the girl drank tea, she asked the prince if they had caught the man. However, Carson said that they couldn't catch him and he escaped. Then he asked if the girl should tell him anything else. Beniti apologized and said that she couldn't stand idly by. Then Carson turned to her and asked her how she knew about that logging area. The girl nervously deceived herself and said that everything here was a bit suspicious, and that it was just her intuition. Carson asked if, following her intuition, she had gone to the logging area, which is not so easy to find even on the map. But the heroine said that she was simply lucky. The girl also said that she had more news. She overheard those men's conversation, and they said it wasn't a plague, but it was about rain grass. She said it was a poison, but the symptoms when consumed were similar to those of the plague. Only it wasn't for those who were weak or hungry, but for those like the recently deceased poor. They are countered by sea moss, and now they need to start curing people. The prince said that he would look for an antidote, and in any case, the girl was now forbidden to act alone. He didn't understand how she could go out with just a search party. I am as if the search teams in these places are just a small guard. The heroine replied that they were not that weak and that they could protect her, but the boy said that it was still dangerous. The girl understood that she herself had given the order, but the soldiers were going to be punished because of her. Beniti realized that she needed to say something to calm the prince, and then said that the guard had helped her. In addition to the Leto's search party, an imperial palace guard was also sent to protect her. The prince said that it was the first time he had heard about this. Then the girl asked him if he had seen an ability that looked like a dark veil. Then Carson made a slight movement with his hand, and magic appeared in his palm. He asked her if the girl was referring to this magic. The heroine opened her mouth in surprise. She didn't understand how he could do this. She wondered if in her past life Carson had always saved her. She didn't believe it because Carson always hated her. The prince then asked her if she now understood how things were. Indeed, it was him, and not someone sent by the imperial palace. The girl, offended, asked him why he was helping her secretly, because he could have simply helped her openly. Then, the prince said that he couldn't just appear there, when in the first place he wasn't there. After all, this is magic that is used from afar, and even if he is not there, he can defeat enemies. In that time, he cast a tracking spell on the girl's pendant. Beniti asked him if he would always follow her if she wore this pendant. Then the prince replied that if he did this, he would exhaust his magic and there would be nothing left of him. The heroine didn't understand if this had happened in a past life, because before she always spoke before going somewhere, and he tormented himself by casting this spell on her. Then, Carson said that it was time for the girl to get up, that they had to go look for the antidote. He said that he was not just going to leave the princess. Soon the young people arrived at the palace. The girl felt sick because she didn't want to fly on a Pegasus. Those trips made her sick. Carson asked her to stay for a while at the Ruby Palace, and that he would go with His Majesty the Emperor. Then he mounted his Pegasus and left, leaving the girl alone. Beniti thought about the fact that she had been in the Ruby Palace in a past life. It was very pleasant for her to be there, because she had no memories of this place. The girl wanted to sneak away unnoticed, but in the corridor, she met the servant of the magical illusion, Irian, who welcomed her to the Ruby Palace. Beniti said that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. She remembered that the meeting with Irian occurred in her past life, unconsciously. Then, the servant greeted Princess Beniti. The girl was surprised. Did he really know her? Irian said that she is one of those who can call His Highness by the nickname Car. Then the girl asked if she really called His Highness Car. Irian said that the princess gave him this glorious and brilliant nickname. The girl couldn't believe her ears, and then asked the servant when he last saw her. Irian replied that it was 10 years ago. Beniti asked him if he knew what she did when she came here. The servant said that the girl was playing in the garden with His Highness and making His Highness cry. This answer greatly confused the girl. Then, Irian said that one day the princess fainted, and the Ruby Palace was turned upside down. It turned out that she fainted in this very building. Then, the girl realized that everything was exactly as she had thought, that Carson was somehow related to her illness. Irian said that's all he knows. As the girl had no more questions, the servant said that it was time to leave. When he left, Beniti sighed in relief. Then she walked down the corridor and saw 2 maids there, cleaning the walls. They whispered that every time they came here they felt terrible, because many people had died here before. Beniti had no idea what they were talking about. Then she stepped out towards them, and the girls immediately turned around, their faces contorted in surprise. They rudely asked how the girl got here. Then the heroine said that they did not recognize the silver-haired princess at all, and that they were not behaving appropriately. The girls immediately gasped in horror. They quickly bowed and greeted Princess Beniti, asking for forgiveness for their behavior. Then the heroine sighed wearily and ordered them to continue their recent conversation. She wanted them to talk in detail about the people dying in this palace. The girls immediately hesitated, saying that they did not know the details about this. But they saw that bodies were being taken out of the Ruby Palace. However, it was forbidden to talk about this in the palace, so they asked the princess to keep it a secret from the head maid. The girl thought about how something like this could happen in the Ruby Palace. She was tormented by the thought that something terrible had happened in that place. Soon the girl went to the office to put her thoughts in order. She remembered the maid's words that human corpses were once taken out of the Ruby Palace. At that moment, Arian entered the office and asked the girl why she was thinking so much. Beniti immediately got up from her seat and ran to the prince, asking him if they had found sea moss. But the man said that they had a problem. It turns out that the seawater in Rodron is too cold, so they won't be able to go look for moss. However, the girl said that there was a way. But Carson immediately warned her that jumping into the sea right now would be suicide. Beniti said that they wouldn't be able to ride it, but they could still get it. She said that the people of Aja, the sea people, must have sea moss. The inhabitants of Aja are pirates from the coasts of Rodron. They pierce their ears, and they wear dangling earrings, as a custom called the Oath of the Sea. The people of Aja believe that the earrings will protect them. Then the prince asked her if she was really going to catch pirates at sea, and the girl said that the only thing she needed was to get on the pirate ship. The prince wondered how they were going to do this, since they did not allow people from land to board. Without the Oath of the Sea, there is no way to get there. He said that pirates do not pierce their earlobes to look good, but make a large hole in the oracle. He couldn't believe that the Duke's princess was going to pierce her earlobes. Then, the girl said that it wasn't easy, but it was the only way to get on the pirate ship. Carson said that under no circumstances would he allow her to do this. Someone else had to get there besides the princess. However, the girl understood that only she could do this, because in a past life, she boarded an empty pirate ship captured by Carson. In fact, the people of Agia are destined to be swept away by Carson a few years later and disappear into the margins of history. Little is known about pirates now, but then Carson delved into their shipbuilding and their culture, which is why the girl knew a lot about them. Beniti said that when it comes to operations, she knows more, so she asked for the matter to be left in her hands. The boy asked her how she knew all this, and the girl replied that she knew someone who knew a lot about them. She promised him that she would be able to handle this task. The prince cursed out of irritation, and because of how brave this princess was. Then he said that it was time to leave, but Beniti asked him if he would agree with this plan. even if they had to pierce their ears. Carson replied that he agreed with everything, but that they didn't have much time, so they had to hurry, and that's why he was interested in the girl's plan. The heroine said that they would marry you off to the orphans. Pirates buy all orphans from common people and raise them to become pirates. At that moment, Irian appeared in the office, as His Majesty called him. The prince said that he and the princess would disguise themselves as commoners, so he asked the servant to prepare everything. Then Beniti said that there was something important to note. The thing is that once the prince gets there, he will have to speak like a commoner, without any strict style. Soon, Carson and Beniti put on normal clothes and once again repeated their plan, according to which they were ordinary commoners and had nowhere to go. Then they entered one of the establishments. The heroine immediately bent over, pretending her stomach hurt a lot. An employee of the establishment immediately ran to her and asked her what was wrong. Then the girl said that they hadn't eaten in 2 days and that she was simply starving. She asked the woman to give her a plate of rice, and in return they would do anything. Seeing all this, Carson wondered if they would be able to carry out this plan. Hearing the words that they were prepared for anything, the woman smiled slyly. She went to the kitchen and asked the boys to follow her, saying that she would bring them a hot stew. Beniti asked the prince in a whisper to thank the woman for her help. The man raised his head and expressed his gratitude to the woman. He sounded like a commoner at all. As soon as the woman disappeared around the corner, she immediately ran somewhere in the room and told the man that they had finally pulled off a great trick. She asked him to call the people. Then she brought out a whole tray of food for her guests and asked them to sit at the table. Beniti smiled widely and thanked the woman for the food. Then the woman said that she had people she knew well and that she could get jobs for the boys. She invited them to immediately go deeper into the room so they could see for themselves. Beniti and Carson immediately tensed, but they had no choice but to accept. Then the woman led them to the dock, where the pirates had already gathered. The heroine noticed that a man was following them, and recently he definitely wouldn't let them escape. Then the woman asked the boys to wait a second. Then, suddenly, she leaned against the wall and began to hum some song. After a while, 2 men came out from around the corner. They were dressed in pirate clothes. As soon as they saw the children, they turned to the woman, not asking if she had brought the children again with deception. The woman said that they should introduce these guys to work. One of the pirates said that these pups don't even know the basics, and they won't be able to use them anywhere. The heroine panicked. She understood that her plan was falling apart, but she needed to seize this opportunity somehow. One of the pirates said that he would pretend that the deal never took place and was about to turn around to leave. Then suddenly, Carson ordered them to stand still. Hearing this, the man immediately turned to him and cursed, not understanding why this scoundrel was addressing him in that way. The heroine knew that things were getting a little heated. Their plan was to pretend to join the pirates to get some sea moss. She was about to apologize for her partner when suddenly the prince stopped her. He told her that he would completely sort it out himself. The operator asked him what he was talking about. He said that he was going to get them all. Hearing this, the operator laughed and pulled a knife from behind his back. The prince said that in this case, he should punish all people involved in the sale. The next moment, he tied the old woman and one of the pirates with magic ties. The other pirate looked at them in confusion, not understanding if that was magic. His companion said that it was time for them to leave here. However, at that moment, Carson rushed at him, causing the pirate to hold his knife in front of him and say that he would cut him if he got any closer to him. Beniti tried to stop the prince, saying that it was very dangerous. The pirate held his knife in front of him, intending to strike the prince with it, but Carson skillfully dodged it. The next moment, he snatched the knife from the pirate's hands. He cut his companion in the chest with it. Then he ran to the other pirate and told him that if he didn't listen, he would be next. The man was confused, not understanding what was happening. Then the prince said that they needed sea moss. If the man brought it, he would save his friend. The pirate said that his ship was not here, so he could not bring it. I assumed it was one of the sailboats in the harbor. Pirate ships also disguise themselves as sailboats when approaching land. She said it was very simple. If a man waited for them to get sea moss, that's all they needed. The prince told him that if he didn't cooperate with them, something terrible would await him. Then the pirates suddenly shouted and said that they could bring them moss. After a while, he brought a whole bag of sea moss. Immediately after this, Carson threw a bottle in his direction. He said that this elixir should be given to the wounded. Then the men immediately stood up and fled. When they were alone, Beniti asked him why he suddenly changed his plan. The man said that if they followed the princess's plan, they would have to pierce their ears. The girl said that was why she was going alone. Then, Carson said that if the princess pierced her ears, the nobles would mock her. This would be a very dangerous activity for the princess. When the girl heard this, her face turned red. Did Carson really care so much about her? Then he took a bag of moss and said that her face was dirty. He gave the girl a napkin and asked her to wipe the stains from her cheek. The heroine smiled slyly and thought that this guy never changes. Soon they arrived at the Rizzo's estate with bags of sea moss. Carson immediately asked where the children he had brought were. Soon the young people were sent to the castle. The girl immediately opened the door. Inside were the twins Reich and Janie, still unconscious. Then the prince handed the man a bag of sea moss and ordered him to make a decoction and give it to the sick. Beniti also asked him to bring them something to eat. Soon everything was done, and Reich was fed a decoction of sea moss. Beniti decided to take care of Janie. Soon both twins were given a medicinal decoction to drink. The man said that both had a very high temperature. At that moment, Carson entered the room. He had already put on his usual clothes and offered Beniti some food, because she had never eaten before. However, the girl said that she would do it later, but now she needs to think about something. However, the man grabbed her hand and told her that thinking also requires energy, and that she first needs to wash and eat. The heroine was very surprised by this behavior. Soon they sat at the table, and a whole plate of delicious food was prepared for the young people. Beniti said that she actually had something to tell the prince. However, she didn't know where to start, so she looked extremely depressed. Carson suggested that she eat something even if she had no appetite. The heroine thought that this plague incident was fake. It was a trick to organize it, and she didn't know who could organize something like this. Then finally, she took a piece of food and put it in her mouth. The prince said that food should not be forced into her mouth. He said that he cut her food, so the girl should worry carefully and eat it. Then he put the fork in her mouth and ordered her to chew each bite well. After a while, Janie came to her senses, left her room, and immediately ran to the girl. Still sure that her name was Tasha, the heroine said that she was very glad that the girl had finally woken up. Janie said that it had been a long time since they last saw each other. Then the man asked her to be more respectful to the girl, because she was the princess of the duchy. The heroine smiled timidly and apologized to the girl for deceiving her, saying that her real name was Beniti, but that she was glad to see Janie again. The girl's face suddenly darkened, and she apologized to the princess. Then the heroine came closer and said that even though they have different statuses, they are benefactors to each other, and they shouldn't forget it. Then Janie smiled widely and said that she would never forget it. At that moment, Reika approached them, overheard their conversation, and asked if the girl's name was really Beniti Reishi. When the girl answered in the affirmative, the young man suddenly looked at Carson and began to realize who this man really was. Then the heroine introduced the young man and told him that he was the crown prince. The twins immediately screamed in surprise. They didn't even think that His Highness, the prince, was standing in front of them. Reika immediately knelt and greeted Carson, the glory of the empire. Beniti said that Reika can already get up from his knees. Carson then told him that he seemed suspicious. He asked Reika to show his true colors. The heroine was surprised and asked if Reika had done anything wrong. Then the prince said that she should pay attention to his posture. By the way he greets and the look in his eyes, he shows no signs of fatigue after an illness. That would not be expected from a commoner. Then he approached the guy again and told him that he seemed extremely suspicious. The heroine ran to the prince and grabbed his hand, telling him that it was time to leave, but that they would definitely see each other again. When they had covered enough distance, the girl asked him why he was criticizing Reika. She asked Carson to be honest and asked him if he was really afraid of discovering that Carson was actually Carr. Then the prince realized that the girl had noticed this. Then he said that during this time, the eyes of this boy became very fierce. The girl guessed that His Highness was going to knight him. Then Carson invited the girl to return to Rieno's. He said that she needed to get ready, that the children still had work to do. That same day, the girl returned to the imperial palace. As soon as she got out of the carriage, Rosalie greeted her. She said that rumors about Beniti had spread throughout the capital. Everyone said that she saved thousands of sick people and personally gave medicine to each of them. But the girl said that this was just a misunderstanding. Rosalie said that it was a great contribution anyway. Then she smiled slyly and congratulated the girl on her success. The heroine said that she would also be a great success, and Rosalie said that this was very encouraging. The heroine asked if simple words were not enough. Then she took out something like a card from her pocket, on which she wrote that the girl should give it to Nade-sana. At that moment, Rumina ran towards them. She seemed very happy. She said that she also did something, but Rosalie interrupted her, saying that she and Beniti were here talking. Rumina immediately frowned and said that Rosalie still didn't fully understand the situation. No matter how hard they try, they will never surpass Beniti. The imperial family had already chosen her as crown princess. Therefore, they had no choice but to give up as quickly as possible. Rosalie laughed nervously and said that Rumina was a descendant of viscounts, and it would be very presumptuous of her to say such a thing. Then Rumina ran towards her screaming. Apparently, a fight was breaking out between the girls. Then Beniti decided to intervene. She said that now was not the time for this. Rosalie should have studied the map, but the girl said that she could no longer tolerate Rumina's insolence. The heroine said that she should calm down because many eyes are watching them. Creating problems does not favor the three of them. Rosalie turned around and saw that there were indeed many people looking at them. Then she said that in that case, she would leave them and go herself to study the map. The girls watched Rosalie leave. When she finally left, Rumina asked Beniti if she wanted to get something. The heroine asked her why she needed it, and if the girl really wanted to give her a gift. Rumina said that she takes orders. She also said that she was going to the city of Karu, and that there she could buy something for the girl. The heroine wondered if anything was needed. Soon she brought Karen a whole box of gems for alchemy. The young man was incredibly happy with this gift. Beniti said that these stones were sent by Rumina, and that all the necessary materials should be here. The young man said that he had to personally thank Rumina, but he couldn't wait to try all these new materials immediately. The heroine thought that Rumina had discovered underground water where she said, so she would soon start her own business and would achieve success. And while Rumina operated in Karu, the truth about the plague in Rizos was announced. The fact that someone was spreading poison could shake the entire empire. So Beniti advocated for hiding this fact. However, Carson did not do this. He said that they had the responsibility to tell the truth without distorting the situation, letting people make their own judgments. In this case, the people of the empire will be able to react more wisely next time. After this announcement, Carson's ratings skyrocketed. The prince born of the most powerful magical force in history, the one who would usher in an era of absolute imperial dominance. They say he has the quality of a saint. Everyone praised him unanimously, but there were also those who envied him. In the future, Carson's charisma will be a mutually sharp sword. The girl wondered if he had been killed for this reason in a past life. However, Karen distracted her thoughts. He called the girl and told her that dirty water becomes clean. This is alchemy that uses underground water. He said that with alchemy, you can do anything if you try hard enough. Hearing this, Beniti smiled slyly. Evil people, whose identities were still unknown, still threatened them. However, she was not going to be afraid. She was going to fight and win, because only she herself could change her destiny. Soon the day of the meeting at the imperial palace arrived. A group of aristocrats arrived here to honor the palace with their visit. Rumina sat alone on the bench and sighed in disgust. Suddenly, Beniti approached her, gestured with her hand, and wished her a happy birthday. The girl was surprised that her friend came, but the heroine was surprised because it was her birthday, and the whole ball was held in her honor. Besides, her trip to Karu was a complete success, so the girl had no reason to cry. However, Rumina said that was precisely the point. While she was not in the capital, the princess held a dress auction, and she missed such precious dresses. Beniti asked her if she should be so upset about this. Rumina said that this time she went to Karu and began to exploit underground water, receiving a lot of support from the townspeople. But the arrogant aristocrats did not particularly recognize her family's enterprise. For them, dignity was more important than money. That's why she wanted to wear princess clothes. The attitude towards clothes that were touched by the princess's hand elevated her dignity. Then, suddenly, she smiled and said that times are changing, and that one day the time will come when capital will become a status. So she shouldn't worry. The heroine smiled warmly and then opened the suitcase she had brought with her. She said that, in her opinion, dignity comes from personality and not from anything else. And these clothes do not enhance dignity, but Rumina deserves to wear clothes that fit her well. It turned out that inside the suitcase there was a dress. As soon as the girl saw it, her eyes lit up with joy. She couldn't believe she had been given such a great birthday present. It was a princess dress, but the girl thought there was a limit to what a person could buy. But Beniti replied that she thought it would suit Rumina better than her. The girl almost burst into tears of happiness. Then, suddenly, she became serious and said that this dress would definitely suit a lady as dignified as her, and thanked Beniti for the gift. Then, she immediately fled to the palace, saying that she would put it on right away. The heroine thought about the fact that several days had already passed since Rumina returned, and Rosalie went to Natason. If they met at Rumina's birthday banquet, it would be exhausting, so the girl decided to take a break. Suddenly, she heard a strange sound behind her. When she turned around, she saw no one, but she knew for sure that she hadn't misheard. It was definitely the voice of the one she heard in the lumber warehouse. Then she turned to the tree. Suddenly, the heroine saw a man walking out of the palace. Judging by the suit, he was a coachman, but there were no horses or carriages nearby. The girl realized that she wouldn't be able to catch up with him on foot. At that moment, someone put a hand on her shoulder, and it turned out to be the prince. He asked her where the girl was rushing off to. Beniti asked him why he was here now. She suddenly remembered that when she was in Natason in a past life, a knight helped her. His identity was Carson. She thought that this time he would go with Natason, because her whole plan, told to Rosalie, was based on his existence, and now she realized that Rosalie was in danger. Then the girl shouted that His Highness should not be here now. The prince asked why Rumina invited him to her birthday, but Beniti said that she needed to touch His Majesty's body. She took his hand and dragged him aside, asking where Pegasus was. But the prince counter-questioned her, asking her why she was chasing this coachman. Beniti said that the voice she heard in the materials warehouse belonged to the coachman. However, there is something more important than this matter. She urgently needed to go to Natason. The prince wondered why she needed to go there, if Princess Rosalie had already gone there. Then the heroine said that the prince should be there, even though he is here now. She said that he was supposed to go with Rosalie, just as he went with her to Rizzo's. That's why she asks why he is here now. Soon, the prince began to understand the logic Beniti was trying to convey to him. However, he said that Princess Rumina managed on her own, which means that Princess Rosalie will be fine. The heroine thought that, in reality, everything was as it should be, but she was worried about the question of why he was still following her. But she said that anyway, for lack of time, she would explain everything when they arrived at Natason. It is not yet known whether the family is involved in the search for Carson's assassination attempt. The girl also didn't know who was responsible for her family becoming so unhappy. Even for the sake of truth, she could not let Rosalie die. Soon, Beniti and the prince arrived at Billy's bakery, which she was talking about. The prince said that whenever he came to the gambling house, this was the place where they exchanged information. He wanted to leave, but the princess stopped him. She said that to enter the gambling house, they would need Billy's bread. However, they are now young nobles, so they will definitely arouse suspicion. The princess then asked if they couldn't just break down the door of the gambling house and enter, but the heroine said that this place, created by digging a cave, would collapse if there was an explosion. The prince sighed tiredly, realizing that they wouldn't be able to get in that way. Then he said that they should go in without demolishing the bakery. Despite the girl's warning, he opened the door, and inside was a man with a tray containing several loaves of bread. He greeted the gentleman and told him that he seemed like a noble man, so he asked him how he had come to such a remote place. Beniti wondered if they had been recognized, but the man seemed to think of Carson only as a stupid noble. Then, suddenly, the prince said that he had heard that Billy's bread was sold here. Hearing this, the man immediately pulled a knife from his pocket and said that he now understood where this young noble had come from. However, the prince was not afraid. He asked the man to simply give him this bread, and instead of answering, the man threw a knife at him, saying that all that bread had long been sold out. Basically, struggling to recover from the blow, the knife flew directly towards the door behind him. He said that the man's aim was simply terrible. However, Beniti realized that this was actually their signal and rushed to warn the prince of the danger. She said that now there would be someone behind that door. Then Carson opened the door and looked outside. He saw that the people from the gambling house were fleeing quickly and noted that they were quite clever. Then he called his Pegasus with the intention of catching them. The animal flew so fast that the heroine didn't even have time to orient herself and jump onto it behind the prince. However, Carson managed to offer her his hand at the last moment, and the girl jumped onto Pegasus with him. Suddenly, she saw one of the people from the gambling house. He fell to the ground in an attempt to escape on his horse. Beniti said that if he didn't want trouble, he should simply answer the question. She asked if there was any way to get in besides Billy's bread. However, the stranger said that if he spoke, he would be killed. The prince said that if he cooperated with them, they would protect him. Then the boy said that inside the valley, on the rock, there was a cave, and the young people could enter by following the path. He said that this passage was invented for those moments when it was necessary to escape. Beniti and Carson looked at each other, but still, they decided to trust the young man's words and flew to the indicated place. It turned out that the guy didn't lie, and there really was a passage in the right place. Then the prince asked the girl how she knew that was true. The girl thought that in her past life, when she was suppressing and the mountain house, there were some who escaped and were not noticed. At that moment the cave collapsed, and they had no way to escape. However, she replied that she could tell if a person was lying just by looking into their eyes. But the prince didn't believe her words. At that moment, the girl suddenly stumbled on a stone, but Carson managed to grab her hand. He said that she should follow him carefully and watch her steps. Soon they headed to the club towards a cave, and with each step it became darker. Soon they arrived at the indicated place, but it seemed that it was closed from the inside. Then Beniti asked the prince to open the door, because he is a magician. However, Carson said that, unfortunately, there were no ways to open the lock using magic. But there was still a way. The man brought his hand to the girl's hair and pulled out a hair. "I apologize for my actions." Then he put it in a crack between the stones, and the hair seemed to get inside by itself. Carson explained that this is dancing hair. Inside it looks like a long-haired woman, and this door will be opened by someone who will be fascinated by her appearance. After a while, the door opened. Carson and Beniti entered, and as soon as they were inside, the girl saw someone's body on the floor. However, the princess asked her not to delay and told her that they should enter quickly. The heroine thought that Rosalie should have already entered the control room. When the young people entered, they saw something incredible. There was something like a bar inside, but inside there was a fight. People were fighting with swords and knives. The heroine didn't understand what happened to Rosalie, but she hoped she wasn't caught. She had to get to the office safely, as the girl told her. Then the princess turned to the prince and told him that they should leave this place to the common soldiers, and that they should go in search of a charge. She said that they would definitely be able to find their way there. Beniti said that she had nothing to worry about, because His Highness was on her side. Carson looked at her indifferently and asked her to look at her feet more often, because in such confusion, it is easy to get distracted and hurt. Then they went deeper into the cave in search of the control room. Soon they met Rosalie, who was in the company of guards. The heroine called the girl in a whisper. Rosalie was incredibly surprised to see Beniti in the company of the prince. She said that suddenly, he was also dragged into this situation. Then, the heroine approached the girl and told her that there was no time for that, and asked her how much time had passed since the confrontation at that door. Rosalie said that about 2 hours had passed since then. The heroine thought about it. This meant that they had about 1 more hour, after which their people would collapse the cave. She told Rosalie that they first needed to discover the gunpowder, and then a friendly magician would appear. Then, Rosalie said that the magician the girl was talking about had not yet arrived, and asked what was happening here. The heroine replied that he had arrived. Then she would go to look for gunpowder with the magician. Rosalie didn't understand what she was talking about. Then Beniti pointed to the prince and said that the magician was here. Rosalie looked at them bewildered, not believing that His Highness was that magician. Then the heroine said that in any case, they would definitely protect this place, and in an hour the gambling house would be closed. Soon Beniti and the prince went even deeper into the cave. Carson asked her what kind of performance it was, but the girl said that she didn't have time to explain. If they didn't find gunpowder, then everything would collapse. The man asked how she knew all this, to which the girl replied that it was just her guess. There is something called precognition, which she is working on while His Highness simply looks at her with contempt. If this place collapses due to gunpowder, more than half of the people here will die. These are the people of the empire, and the prince was obliged to take care of them. The man said that they were afraid of being discovered, so they created a powder magazine to kill people and destroy evidence. The girl looked up and realized that they had scattered gunpowder there, so that the entire ceiling would explode in a chain reaction. It was full of holes. Carson said that these are not vents. They are meant to bring down the ceiling. They should go up. He asked the girl to follow him, looking back and around. If there was an ambush, she should warn him. He asked her to hold his hand tightly, and if the girl let go, she would die. Beniti thought that if it weren't for Carson, she would hardly have found the location of the gunpowder on her own. Suddenly, the prince sharply pushed towards her and took her hand. Soon they found a passage. The man said that he should protect him, and that when they ran to stop them, he should not let them blow up the barrels. However, a voice from deep within the cave said that even if they had such a plan, it was already too late. As it turned out to be a man, he lit a match and intended to set the place on fire. Beniti screamed, urging him not to do this, saying that if he did, he would die too. The man said that if he leaves, he will die anyway. They won't leave him alive, so it's better to die here altogether. At that moment, he suddenly drew his sword and pointed it at the man. The man was shocked. He realized that the young man had a magic sword in his hands. The next second, a magical power took over the man's hand, in which he was holding a match. Beniti ordered the guards to immediately arrest the man. However, Carson noticed that there was someone else behind the stranger. He ordered the man to leave immediately. A stranger in a cloak and hood said that the young nobles are very brave, because if this powder magazine explodes, everyone will die. Then he removed his hood and said that for now it would be better if they took the soldiers they had brought if they didn't want to die here with them. Then Carson said he would stay. However, the princess can leave. The man said it was nice to see that he was so attentive to the young woman, and he let her go. The heroine didn't understand what he was thinking and let only her go. However, she decided not to argue and ran towards the exit, intending to bring support inside. The next moment, she heard a loud magical explosion behind her. She turned and saw that the stranger had imbued his wand with magical energy. Apparently, he was also a magician. Beniti understood that he would now hit the prince. However, when she opened her eyes, she saw that Carson came from the stranger's magic. But from the looks of it, it didn't harm him. Then the girl shouted that that wizard was a cowardly monster and ordered him to stop now. The man didn't understand at all what was happening to his magic. He didn't understand how this man could resist the magic of electricity. He cursed as he asked the stranger who he was. Soon the magic that encased the man's wand completely disappeared. The electric aura finally subsided from the prince, and he began to breathe deeply, trying to regain his senses. Beniti became seriously worried when she realized that something was wrong with the prince. Meanwhile, the man, hearing her address him, calling him Highness, was immediately bewildered. One of the men lunged at Carson with a knife, intending to kill him, and at that moment, an electric aura rekindled around the prince, which was activated because the metal blade of the knife touched him. The heroine thought this was harming the prince, but soon saw that he was fine. Carson shook himself and straightened up, as if nothing had happened. The girl thought that the previous one would not have covered her so carelessly. Then, the prince said that the girl should not approach him, because there was still electricity. However, Beniti just stood there and stared at the young man. Carson looked at her and saw that she was crying. He called her his baby and asked her to stop crying. Then he turned to the wizard, who lay practically unconscious. He gently kicked him, but soon realized that he had exhausted all his magic. But he was still alive. After a moment, the man cleared his throat and realized that the crown prince was standing next to him. Carson smiled and said that they should leave him here and go down and get the people outside. Meanwhile, Rosalie's people tried to break down the door. She ordered the people inside to come out quickly and stop hiding. The people inside decided to resist until the wizard arrived, realizing that their affairs were going badly. At that moment, Carson approached them, smiled, and asked them if they were really looking for their colleague. It turned out that he brought that wizard with him, dragging his unconscious body across the floor. Then he ordered everyone else to surrender immediately. The men looked in horror at the prince's face, not understanding what to do. But soon, they all threw their swords to the ground and willingly surrendered. The guards arrested them and took them out of the cave. At that moment, Rosalie approached Beniti. The girl thought that she didn't believe the girl did everything herself. Then, the heroine said that the most important task remained. They needed to find out who their leader was. Then she said that Rosalie's activities were just beginning. However, apparently, the girl was extremely unhappy with the outcome of events. The girl wanted to leave, when suddenly Rosalie grabbed her hand and stopped her. She handed her the card and told her that she would no longer need it. Beniti silently took the package and walked towards Carson. She handed him the map and asked him to look at it. She explained that it was a map of Natason made by Rosalie, and Beniti came here immediately after seeing it, hoping that this object would give the man answers to some of his questions. However, the girl understood that it was all a lie, because she herself was the author of the map. Then, Carson said that all this was very strange, because the handwriting on this card was very similar to Benitti's. The heroine was surprised that the prince knew what her handwriting looked like, but she said that she and Rosalie simply had a similar writing style. Then she asked if the prince was hurt, to which the man said that he had a minor injury, so everything was fine. However, the girl noticed that he didn't look very good. She also realized in an instant that Carson was incredibly sexy. The man could barely stay on Pegasus, and if the girl hadn't held him, he would definitely have fallen. She hugged him tightly from behind and asked Pegasus to hurry and take them to the palace. Shortly after this, the beast soared into the sky and headed for the desired location. Soon they arrived at the Ruby Palace. Irian laid Carson on the bed and was about to call the doctor. Then he said that the princess needed to leave for a minute, but the girl said that she would also be nearby. Irian said that His Highness would be stripped of his clothes for treatment, so he could not give her permission. The heroine was angry that this should not have happened. However, she obediently left the room, but soon Arian appeared near her, saying that biting your nails is a bad habit. The girl said that she didn't even notice, it was out of concern for His Highness. Then she asked if she could see his condition, and the servant hastened to ask. After a while, someone entered the room. The man in glasses said that he was here instead of Arian. The girl recognized him as Dr. Toya and asked him how the prince was. The man said that the visible burn itself was minor, but there were traces of magic in the wound. His Highness resisted the power of magic. Blocking magical power consumes more magical energy than the attacker, so he lost a lot of energy. The girl asked what condition he was in now, to which the doctor replied that he was recovering well, and Benitti had nothing to worry about. However, he said that there was something strange about this whole matter. His Highness blocked the electric magic, but the doctor wondered why it didn't return, or didn't reflect it. Then, Benitti wondered if it was all her fault. No, Carson took the full brunt of the attack while protecting her. The girl said that he did it because there was a lot of gunpowder around. Then she said that the doctor could leave. After a while, she headed towards Carson's bedroom. Outside, it was already night. She opened the door and entered. The man lay on the bed, apparently asleep. The girl approached him and looked at him sadly. She didn't understand why he was doing this. In a past life, he was so cold and dismissive towards her. She wanted to touch him when suddenly he groaned. Apparently, the prince was still in pain, so the girl quickly withdrew her hand and held her breath, pretending she wasn't there. Then, suddenly, she wondered why no one had visited the prince all this time. Then she decided to call Irian. The servant appeared in the room at that very moment. It turned out that he informed the imperial palace that Carson was ill. However, their majesties the emperor and empress will not come. It turned out that His Highness doesn't want anyone in the palace. The emperor comes sometimes, but the prince asked him to refrain from even this. She wouldn't understand if such a request had been made in normal times. But the prince was sick now, but Irian said that the prince insisted on that decision. The girl thought that she had heard that Carson liked to be alone. Had his love for solitude really reached such a degree? Then she asked Irian if he knew why things were happening as they were. The servant replied that, unfortunately, he couldn't tell her anything. The girl realized that this was a prohibition, so there was no point in asking anything else. Then she sent the servant to attend to his duties. When she was alone, she headed towards the prince's bed. Benitti didn't understand how he couldn't feel lonely in such a big palace. She remembered that in her past life, he also asked her not to come by sending her magical snakes. If it weren't for her, there would be no one in this ruby palace, and all this time he would sleep alone. Then the girl sat down next to his bed, and soon she fell asleep beside him. In the morning, she woke up to Carson's voice. He said that the girl slept as if it were her own bed. Then he asked her why she didn't go home. The heroine replied that she wanted to be near him. The young man laughed and said that she fell asleep, curled up next to him. The girl didn't remember any of that. Then the man asked her why her side hurt. Benitti said that she made a mistake because she was very tired and apologized for it. Then Carson said that she had nothing to regret, they should go eat. The girl looked at him in surprise, but still got out of bed and followed him. When they had breakfast, the prince asked her if the food was delicious. Benitti replied that it was very tasty. Then Irian brought a cake on a plate, His Highness's favorite dessert. As soon as the girl saw it, drool began to flow from the corner of her mouth. Then, suddenly, Carson said that he had realized one thing. In fact, the only person who has ever spent the night in the Ruby Palace is Benitti.